Welcome to Goofy Harry. Today's adventure: what if Harry was claimed by Athena at age 6 and became goddess of wisdom's champion? If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The boy in the cupboard under the stairs had 3 good things and 41 bad ones. Harry counted them sometimes when his uncle was shouting, and he needed to be somewhere that wasn't here. The good things were a thin slice of yellow light that came under the door at night when the kitchen lamp was on, the smell of clean laundry from the cardboard box he used as a pillow, and a place between the second and third stair where the wood whined a particular note when Dudley came down, and not when Aunt Petunia did, which gave him about 4 seconds of warning. The bad things were everything else. He had names for some of them. The splinter, the damp patch, the spider that was always there even though he never saw it move. The names made the bad things smaller, the way putting a label on a box made it stop pretending to be a country. He was thinking about labels because Mrs. Burchell, the substitute teacher who had filled in for Mrs. Beasley that morning, had used the word freakish in front of the whole class and then looked surprised that no one had laughed. Harry had been in the back row, working on a long division problem the rest of year 2 would not get to until next term when she had said it. He had not laughed either. He had looked at Mrs. Burchell's face and seen, very clearly and for the first time as a sentence and not a feeling, that she was not angry with him. She was angry that the world contained him, which was different and worse. That had not been the bad part. The bad part had been her coffee. She had been carrying it back to her desk with the careful walk of someone who knew the cup was full to the rim, and Harry had been thinking, very privately, that he wished she would spill it on her shoes. Just on her shoes. Not enough to burn her, only enough to make her late and quiet for an afternoon. He had been thinking it the way he thought about birthday cake or a dog of his own, with all the wishing kept close to his chest where no one could see it and take it from him. And then, as Mrs. Burchell set the cup down at the corner of her desk, the coffee inside had turned, all in one quiet shudder, into seawater. He had known it was seawater because the smell had reached the back row a second after the change, briny and wrong in a classroom that smelled of crayon and floor polish. Mrs. Burchell had looked at her cup. Then she had looked at the class. Then her eyes, slowly and as if drawn on a string, had come to him. He had not done anything with his face. He had learned years ago not to do anything with his face when adults were looking at him like that, but she had known anyway. Adults always seemed to know, even when he had been very careful, and he had not been careful enough today because he had wanted the coffee to spill and he had let himself want it. She had not shouted. She had marched him by the shoulder to the headmistress's office and said 3 sentences in a low tone he had not been able to hear, and the headmistress had telephoned Aunt Petunia, and Aunt Petunia had not screamed because she never screamed in public. She made her face go small and tight like a pulled stitch, and she had walked him home in silence past the Palkases' house, and at the front door she had said, without looking at him, "Cupboard." Now, and he had gone. That had been 3 hours ago. Uncle Vernon would be home at 6:30. The slice of yellow light under the door had been getting paler as the kitchen lamp was switched off, and the dining room lamp was switched on instead, which meant Aunt Petunia was setting the table for 2, which meant he would not be eating tonight, which was fine because he had had a sandwich at school, but it also meant Uncle Vernon would not be in a hurry, which was less fine. Harry sat on the cardboard box with his knees drawn up and tried to think about something useful. He thought instead about the seawater. He had wanted the coffee to spill. He had not wanted it to be seawater. He had not even known that the inside of a cup could become a different liquid. He had not known that wanting could reach across a room and change a thing without touching it. He thought about it with the steady, dogged attention he gave to every problem the world handed him, because if he could not understand a thing, he could not predict a thing, and if he could not predict a thing, it could hurt him. And the long division of his life so far had taught him that the world handed him hurt almost every day, and only sometimes a way to dodge it. So, the coffee had become seawater because he had wanted it to spill, and the world had, instead of giving him exactly that, given him something near it, which suggested that the world was listening, but not perfectly, which suggested that the world was not listening on purpose. It was being made to listen by some piece of him he did not yet know how to use. He turned this over in his mind the way he had turned over the chess problems in the Daily Mail when Aunt Petunia put it down beside the bin and forgot it for an afternoon. He had not been allowed to play chess, but he had taught himself to read the diagrams, and the diagrams had been the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, because in a chess diagram nothing was hidden and everything mattered. The wood at the second and third stair joint creaked, a long, low note. Dudley. Harry shifted his weight onto the balls of his feet and listened. Dudley's footfall went past the cupboard, paused, came back, paused. There was a small sound of a finger being run along the cupboard door. Then Dudley said in his thinking voice, "They said you did the freaky again." Harry did not answer. Answering Dudley was a trap whose teeth were always in the same place. "Dad's gonna kill you," Dudley said, with the loose, interested tone of someone reporting weather, and he went away. Harry let his shoulders down. It was at exactly that moment that he saw the owl. The cupboard had no window. The cupboard had only the slat at the bottom of the door and the keyhole. And through the keyhole, when he leaned forward, he could see a slice of the entrance hall and a slice of the front door. And through the small window above the front door, he could see a slice of evening sky over Privet Drive going the color of wet brick. And in that slice of sky, very still, sat an owl. It was a barn owl, gold and white, and it was on the lamppost across the road as if it had always been on the lamppost across the road, which Harry knew it had not, because he had checked the lamppost twice already this hour out of habit. The owl was looking at the front door of number 4. Harry's breath caught a little in a way he could not explain. He had seen owls in books. He had not seen one in the daytime and never one this early, and he had certainly never seen one that was watching him through 2 doors and a road. He blinked. When he opened his eyes, there were 2 owls on the lamppost, then 4. Then he could not count them because the lamppost was no longer the place where they were. They were on the hedges, on the picket fence opposite, on the satellite dish at number 6, on the gutter of number 2. Owls of every color, tawny and snow white and one the color of fresh ash. They were not moving. They were not making a sound. They were watching the cupboard. Harry's heart did a small, surprised thing. It was not quite fear. He had a long catalogue of fears, kept neat in his head like a stamp collection, and this did not match any entry. Something cool brushed against the inside of his left wrist. It was not a hand and it was not the air. It was something like the way water felt when it was first turning to ice, a faint, clean shock that traveled up his arm and into the back of his head. He looked down at his wrist. There on the soft, pale skin where the veins ran, a pattern was finishing drawing itself. An olive branch curving along the bone with a small, round-faced owl perched at the joint, both rendered in a fine gray line as if drawn in careful pencil. He stared. The line did not fade. He touched it. The line did not smudge. And then, quite suddenly and without any noise at all, his head was full of things he had not put there. Greek words came first in tidy little ranks. He knew, without knowing how, that glaucopes meant gray-eyed, and that it was a word for a particular goddess, and that the goddess had olive trees and owls and a city full of marble. He knew that Sophia was wisdom, and that it was a different thing from Medes, which was cunning, and that confusing them had killed many men. He knew, in the same breath, 3 lines of a poem that he had certainly never read, in a meter he could not have named yesterday. He knew that the long division he had done that morning was a small instance of a more general technique called the Euclidean algorithm, and that it had been worked out about 2,500 years ago by a man with a marvelous beard. He knew that Uncle Vernon's left knee popped when he climbed the stairs in a wet evening, which meant arthritis, which meant the man would always be slightly off balance on his bad leg, which was the leg Harry usually retreated to, which had been a mistake and would now stop being a mistake. He sat very still. He felt, all at once, less alone in his own head than he had ever felt. He thought, very carefully and aloud in a whisper because he wanted to hear it, "Hello." Nothing answered. But the owls did not move, and the pattern on his wrist did not fade, and the cool feeling at the base of his skull stayed, like a hand laid lightly on the back of his neck, not pressing, only present. He thought, "Are you the one who put this in me?" There was then the smallest of voices, and it was inside his own thinking, and it was not his own thinking, and it said calmly, the way an adult speaks to a child they respect, "Yes." He did not cry, although his eyes did the thing where they prepared to. He had stopped crying when he was 4 on principle. "Why?" he thought. "Because you have been doing my work alone." He turned that sentence over. It had 3 words doing 4 jobs, and it was perfect. "What is your name?" he thought, because names were important. The world was full of evidence on that. Athena. He had heard the word once or twice, possibly in Mrs. Beasley's class, and it had not been a name in his head, only a sound. Now the sound arrived with its furniture: shield, spear, owl, olive, weaving, justice, war by strategy and not by appetite, born from a god's head fully grown. He saw briefly and clearly a tall woman with gray eyes and short, tied-back hair, looking at him from somewhere far away. She nodded once, the small nod of an adult acknowledging a competent stranger. Then the front door slammed. "Petunia!" roared Uncle Vernon, in the voice that meant a customer had been difficult or the traffic on the M25 had been worse than usual or someone in the office had said the word bonus in his hearing. "Petunia, where is the boy?" There was no answer because Aunt Petunia had taught herself, slowly and over many years, to be in a different room when Vernon arrived in this mood. Harry heard her chair scrape in the dining room and her shoes go quietly through to the kitchen. Petunia. The school called the office. The school called my office. A footfall in the hall, heavy. Then the second and third stair joint did not creak because Vernon had stopped before it. He was standing in front of the cupboard. "Boy," Vernon said, not loudly. The not loudness was worse. "Open this door." Harry's hand went, by old habit, to the latch on the inside of the cupboard, the latch that Vernon had put there in case Harry decided to come out without permission. He paused with his fingertips on it. The cool presence at the back of his neck did not say anything. It only waited, the way a teacher waits for a child to recall a lesson. He thought, "He is going to hit me." He thought, "He always hits me." He thought, "He hits me on my left ear because that is the side closest to the door when I open it. And after he hits me on my left ear, he reaches for my collar with his right hand. And after he reaches for my collar with his right hand, he puts his weight on his bad leg." He had known these things for a long time. He had not, until this minute, known what to do with them. He drew his fingertips back from the latch and said, in the pleasant, mild voice he used with Mrs. Beasley, "Just a moment, Uncle Vernon. The latch is sticking." Behind the door, Vernon's breath did the small, wet thing it always did when he was not expecting cooperation. "Open it," he said low. Harry opened it. Vernon's hand was already up. Vernon's hand was always already up. Harry had a heartbeat to choose. He chose. He stepped not back into the cupboard but forward into the hall, 2 quick low steps, ducking under the swung hand. The hand passed over his hair with a small sound like someone slapping cloth. Vernon, surprised, swung again with the other hand, and Harry was already not where he had been. He was at Vernon's left side, against the bad knee, leaning into it without weight, the way Helena would later teach him to lean, the way he already knew somehow to lean. Vernon's leg buckled. Vernon went down sideways onto the second step. It was not a hard fall. Vernon had taken worse falls climbing out of his car. He came up cursing, shoved Petunia's side table out of the way. She had begun to come back into the hall and stopped and lunged with his full weight. Harry stepped sideways and let him pass. Vernon hit the wall. It was the wall under the photograph of Dudley as a baby, the photograph in the cream frame that had been Petunia's mother's. The frame fell. The glass cracked. Vernon turned, and his eyes were doing the red thing now. And Harry was not afraid, which was a stranger feeling than the owls, because Harry had been afraid of Uncle Vernon every day of his life since he was 3 years old and could remember being afraid. He noticed the absence of his fear with a small clinical interest, the way he had noticed the change in the coffee. He thought, I will be afraid later. Right now I have to think. He thought, I am 6. He is 41. He weighs 4 times what I do. I cannot fight him. I have to use him. The hall mirror was on the wall behind Vernon. The hall mirror had a heavy pewter frame, and Petunia hated it because it was the only thing left from Vernon's mother, and it tilted a little and could not be made to hang straight, and the screw at the top of it had been working loose for 2 years. Harry knew because he was the one who had to dust it. He looked at the mirror. He did not throw anything at it. He did not raise a hand. He simply looked and wanted the screw to give, the way he had wanted the coffee to spill, only this time he wanted with the whole new weight of the new thing in his head, and he kept the want clear and small and exact. The mirror jumped on its hook with a small clank. The screw did not give. Vernon, lunging, was 4 feet away. 3. Harry, in a voice he did not recognize, calm, close, resolute, 6 years old going on something else, said, Please. The screw gave. The pewter frame, all 6 pounds of it, came off the wall and hit Uncle Vernon on the back of the head. Vernon went down again, slower this time. He sat on the floor with the strangest expression Harry had ever seen on him, the expression of a man in the process of changing his mind about the universe. Then he closed his eyes and slumped sideways against the banister, and Petunia screamed, finally, in a thin, private way. And the screaming was almost the worst part, because Petunia screaming meant that something had happened that could not be undone with a tea towel and a quiet evening. Harry stood in the hall and breathed. The cool presence at the back of his neck said, Well done. Is he dead? He thought. He looked down at Uncle Vernon. Vernon's chest was moving slowly in a thick way. He will hate me more, Harry thought. He will not have the chance. The presence was firm. Listen to me, Harry. A friend is on her way. She will be at the door in 7 minutes. Do not run. Do not unlock his car. Do not try to find a knife. Go to the kitchen, drink a glass of water, and sit at the table with your hands folded in your lap. Can you do those things? He could. He had been doing exactly those kinds of small, ordered things for as long as he could remember. They were the sequence by which he survived dinner, school, the corner shop, the weekly church visit Petunia had stopped insisting on after he was 4. The voice in his head had asked him for nothing he had not done 100 times. He went into the kitchen, past Petunia, who was on her knees by Vernon and not looking at Harry at all. He filled a glass at the tap. He drank the water. He sat at the kitchen table with his hands folded in his lap and his back straight, and he waited. Petunia came into the kitchen 4 minutes later, very white. She stood in the doorway and looked at him for a long time. He looked back. He did not know what was in his own face, but he knew what was in hers. He had seen it before briefly on the faces of certain teachers when they had been told who his parents were. It was not love. It was not hate. It was a knowledge that did not sit comfortably in the head that held it. Boy, she said. He waited. What did you do? The mirror fell on him, he said, which was technically true. The mirror, she said. Yes. She wet her lips. She said in a voice so low he had to lean a little to hear it, Are you going to do anything to me? He looked at her. He thought about the question. He thought about the long, humorless years of being made small and being made hungry and being made to stand in the rain on the back step until his fingers stopped working. And he thought about the way she had once, when he was very small and Vernon had gone out, given him a piece of toast with butter on it and not looked at him while he ate it but had stood at the sink with her back to him so that he would not be embarrassed by the looking. "No," he said. She believed him. He saw her believe him. It did not soften her exactly, it tired her. "Your mother," she said, "could do things like that." He did not know what to say to that. He had not been told, ever, that his mother could do things. He had not been told much at all about his mother except that she had been a freak, and that the freakishness had killed her and his father in a car crash that Petunia did not like to talk about. He sat very still, and he listened to Petunia not finishing the sentence she had started, and he understood that he had been lied to about something important, and he filed this understanding next to the others. The doorbell rang. It rang once briefly, and was followed by a silence in which Harry could hear, quite clearly, Vernon's slow, thick breathing in the hall. Then a key turned in the front door, which was not possible, because the only people with a key were the three of them and Mrs. Figg next door. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was tall, but not as tall as Vernon. She had short iron-gray hair cut to her jaw. She wore a long charcoal coat and a white blouse buttoned to the throat and a pair of low brown boots that had been resoled at least twice. She was perhaps 50. Her eyes, when she looked at Petunia in the kitchen doorway, were the color of a winter sea. "Mrs. Dursley," she said. Her voice was educated, dry, unhurried. "Who?" Petunia began. "My name is Helena Ashworth," the woman said. "I have come for the boy. I will not be staying." "You can't," Petunia said automatically, as if reading from a small old script. "I can," Helena said. "I am." She walked past Petunia into the kitchen. She did not glance at Vernon on the floor. She came to the kitchen table and crouched down so that her face was level with Harry's, and her gray eyes searched his quickly, the way an adult searches a child for fever, and whatever she had been afraid she would find she did not find, because her shoulders went down a fraction and she let out a small breath through her nose. "Hello, Harry," she said. "I have been hoping to meet you for a long time." "Hello," Harry said politely. "Are you hurt? Number. Are you afraid?" He considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "Not yet," he said. She smiled. It was a small private smile that did not include Petunia at all. "Good answer," she said. "Will you come with me?" "Yes," he said. "Without packing." He looked around the kitchen at the spotless counter and the row of mugs and the magnetic shopping list on the fridge. He thought of the cupboard under the stairs and the cardboard box that was his pillow. "Without packing," he said. "Petunia," Helena said, without turning her head. "Your husband will wake in 11 minutes. He will have a headache that will keep him quiet for 3 days. You will tell him and the school and the neighbors and the police, if it comes to that the boy was taken into the care of his godparents. There are paperwork trails that already exist. They will be found if anyone looks. Do you understand me?" Petunia's mouth had opened. "Godparents," she said faintly. "Yes." Helena straightened. "He had 2. One is dead and one is in prison for a crime he did not commit. The state, in such an event, defaults to a guardian appointed by the boy's school. I am his school's appointee. The school is real. The signature is real. The room is ready." "The school," Petunia said. "The other school," Helena said gently. Petunia's hand went to her mouth. "Lily wrote you letters from there for years," Helena said. "I imagine you remember." "I burnt them," Petunia said before she could stop herself. "I imagine you remember anyway." There was a long pause. Petunia's eyes had gone wet. Harry watched her and he felt nothing in particular, which was, he thought later, the saddest thing about that morning. "Take him," Petunia said. "Take him out of my house." Helena held out a hand to Harry. He looked at it. It was a hand with calluses at the fingertips, the kind a person got from turning the pages of a great many books, and a small old burn scar between thumb and forefinger that was not the kind of scar a kitchen made. He took the hand. It was warm. "Goodbye, Aunt Petunia," he said. She did not say goodbye. She turned away and she put her hand flat on the counter as if to keep herself upright, and she did not turn back as Helena led him through the hall, past Vernon on the floor, over the cracked frame and the silver-edged glass, to the door he had walked through every day of his life, and that he was now walking through, he understood quite clearly for the last time. The owls were still on the lamp-post, on the hedges, on the satellite dish at number 6. As Harry stepped out onto Privet Drive, they all, in a single soundless gesture, turned their heads toward him. Then one by one and very calmly they lifted into the evening sky and were gone. A man at number 11 was watering his hydrangea and had not noticed any of it. "Take my arm," Helena said, "and close your eyes if you like. The first one is unpleasant." "The first one of what?" "Travel," she said. "The way we do it." He did not close his eyes. He held her arm and he looked, deliberately, at number 4 Privet Drive, at the door with the brass numerals, at the kitchen window with Petunia's silhouette at the sink, at the bedroom upstairs where Dudley would be playing on his Mega Drive with the volume up so he did not have to hear adults, and he memorized the look of it the way he had memorized chess diagrams. He memorized it so that he would never again confuse the shape of that house with the shape of a home. Then the world squeezed. It was not pain, although he was glad afterward that Helena had warned him. It was a long, thin compression, as if he were being put through a keyhole and unfolded again on the other side, and it was over before he had time to be properly afraid of it. He opened his eyes onto a different street. It was a narrow cobbled lane lit with old gas lamps that had been wired for electricity at some point, with a quietness that had not disturbed the gas fittings. There were stone tenements rising on both sides, their sandstone gone the color of strong tea. The air smelled of rain on warm pavement and faintly of frying onions. At the far end of the lane was a sign that read Old Town and an arrow pointing to the right. "Edinburgh," Helena said. "I have only seen it on maps," Harry said. "It is better in person." She led him 3 doors down to a shop front with a small, careful window. The window held 3 things: a copy of Marcus Aurelius lying open at the Meditations, a little brass owl no taller than his thumb, and a vase of olive twigs. The sign over the door read in painted italics, ASHWORTHBOOKS, antiquarian, classical, curious. She unlocked the door with a key that looked 100 years old. She held it open for him. Inside, the shop smelled of leather and dust and pipe tobacco that had not been smoked in the room for years but had soaked into the boards. There were books to the ceiling on every wall, and there were books on the floor in stacks taller than him. There was a stove at the back, lit, with a kettle on it that was not whistling. There was a rocking chair with a folded blanket. There was a ladder on a brass rail that ran around the room like a small private train. He stood in the doorway and stared. "Up the stairs," Helena said gently behind him. "We live above the shop. The kitchen is on your left. The bathroom is on your right. Your bedroom is at the top. There is a window in your bedroom that looks out onto the castle. There is a bed in your bedroom that has clean sheets on it. There is a desk. There is a lamp. There is, for tonight, no homework." He did not move. He had been told he had a bedroom and he could not just yet open his hand around the word. She put her hand lightly on his shoulder. "We will eat something first. Then you will sleep. Then in the morning, when you have slept and eaten again, we will talk about a great many things." "Is that all right?" "Yes," he said. "Are you cold?" "A little." She took the blanket off the rocking chair and put it around him, and she led him up the narrow staircase at the back of the shop, lighting candles as she went, although there was perfectly good electricity, because, she told him later, he had had a hard day and candles were kinder to a hard day than bulbs were. In the kitchen, she made him cocoa from real chocolate. She shaved off a brown brick with a small knife. The cocoa was hot enough to be a mouthful of summer in a winter month. She made him toast with butter and a little salt, and put it on a plate with a slice of cold pear. And she sat across from him at the small table by the window, and she did not stare at him while he ate. She drank tea, looking out at the rooftops, while he chewed the toast slowly because chewing slowly made it last longer, and he was not yet sure when the next meal was. When he had finished the pear, he said, "Why did she choose me?" He did not say who. He did not need to. Helena set down her cup. "She has not told you. She said I was doing her work alone." Helena considered the rooftops. "That is true," she said, "and it is not the whole answer. The whole answer is hers to give, not mine. But I will tell you the part I know, if you would like to hear it." "Yes, please." "She has watched you for some time. She watches a great many mortals, but she does not watch most of them long. She watches the ones whose minds, in the dark and in the cold, do not stop working. She watches the ones who, when they are 6 years old and locked in a cupboard, count 3 good things and 41 bad things and put the bad things in named boxes so that they will be smaller. That is uncommon, Harry. It is uncommon at any age. At 6 it is, in her judgment, the beginning of something she would like to see well made." He sat with that. "She did not save me because she felt sorry for me," he said slowly. She saved me because she thought I was worth the trouble." "Yes, that is better," he said. Helena smiled at her teacup. "I thought you would think so," she said. He finished his cocoa. There was a brown ring of it at the bottom of the mug, and he scooped it out with his finger and sucked it because no one was here to tell him not to. Helena did not seem to mind. She seemed, in fact, to approve. She showed him his bedroom. The window did look out onto the castle, which was lit with a white floodlight against the dark blue evening, and which seemed to him at first an impossible thing, a piece of a story that had been mistakenly placed in a real city. There were clean pajamas on the bed in his size, which she must have bought weeks ago and kept folded in the airing cupboard, and they had no monkeys or rocket ships on them, which he was glad of, because at 6 he had begun to feel that the monkey print on the pajamas Aunt Petunia had handed down from Dudley had been a small daily insult of the kind he would not be able to articulate until he was older. He changed in the bathroom. He brushed his teeth with a new toothbrush from a packet on the sink. He walked back to the bedroom with the blanket from the shop still around his shoulders, because he did not want to give it up just yet. Helena was leaning in the doorway. "One more thing tonight," she said, "and then sleep. May I see your wrist?" He held it out. She took it gently in both hands and turned it to the lamplight and looked at the gray owl and the olive branch with an expression he could not quite read, part recognition, part old grief, part a private kind of pride. And then she traced the line of the branch with her thumb very lightly, and she said, in a low voice that was not entirely steady, "Welcome, champion." She tucked him in. She left the lamp on a low setting because he had said, when she asked, that he would rather not be in the dark just yet. She kissed him once, very lightly, on the top of his head, and she went out and shut the door without making a sound. Harry lay on his back and looked at the ceiling. The ceiling had a small painted constellation in one corner, done by some long-ago previous tenant, Orion, with the 3 stars of his belt picked out in silver paint that had darkened with age. Harry had never seen Orion in a sky. He had never had a sky to look up into without a roof or a row of streetlights between him and it. He thought he would like to soon. The cool weight at the back of his neck settled into a long, slow rhythm like a tide. "Are you still there?" he thought. "I am," the presence answered. "Will you be there tomorrow? Always." He thought about always for a moment. It was a word he had not allowed himself often. "Thank you," he thought. The presence did not answer in words. It answered in something like a hand laid lightly on his hair, the way Helena's had been. He turned his face into the pillow, which did not smell of dust or cardboard but of clean cotton and a little lavender, and he did not cry because he had stopped crying when he was 4 on principle, but the principle bent a little around the edges, and he allowed himself for just a few minutes to leak. Then he slept. Below, in the bookshop, Helena Ashworth turned the sign on the door from open to closed. She moved through the dark shop without lighting a lamp. She had been moving through it without lighting a lamp for 30 years. She went to the back, to the small desk under the window, and she sat down and folded her hands on the blotter and looked at them for a long time. "He is here," she said, to no one a stranger would have seen. "I know," said Athena, who was sitting in the rocking chair as if she had always been there with her gray coat across her knees and her gray eyes on the door of the shop. "Thank you. He is harder than I expected. He has had to be. He will be hard to keep alive." "Yes," Athena said, "we will keep him alive anyway." Helena looked up at her then, the way one looks at a person one has known for a very long time and still does not quite know. "He asked the right first question," she said. "Of course he did," said Athena. "That is why he is mine." Outside, a light rain began to fall on the cobblestones of the old town, and an owl, small and gray and new, flew once around the chimneys of the bookshop and settled on the windowsill above Harry's bed and tucked its head under its wing and went asleep. Chapter 2. The Wisdom of Owls. The first lesson came on the morning after the first night. Harry woke to light on the ceiling and the smell of butter and the ordinary astonishment of waking in a bed that was his. He lay for a while taking inventory. A blanket that weighed the right amount. A pillow with lavender in it. A small gray owl dozing on the outer sill with one eye open, watching him with the polite curiosity of a stranger sharing a train compartment. The mark on his wrist, unchanged. A faint sense of a voice somewhere just under thinking, the way a stream can be heard through a wall of trees. He got up. He tried the wardrobe. Clothes in his size, plain cotton, no monkey print. He dressed. In the kitchen, Helena was frying eggs in a black pan and reading, at the same time, a book whose title he could not make out because the spine was cracked in 3 places. She looked up when he came in. "Good morning," she said. "There is toast. There are eggs. There is juice. There is, in fact, more than one of everything. The eggs are fresh and the juice is not the dreadful pulp-free kind. Sit." He sat. "I owe you a conversation," she said, when he had eaten a slice of the toast and drunk half the juice. "Several conversations, actually. We will have them in order from easy to hard. Is that acceptable?" "Yes." "The easy one first," she said. "My name is Helena Ashworth. I am 53 years old. I was born in Winchester to a woman named Margaret Ashworth who was a witch, which is a word we will unpack in a moment, and to a god named Athena, which is a word we will unpack after that. I have lived in this flat for 30 years. I own the bookshop downstairs. I am, in the technical register used by a particular sort of administrator, a daughter of Athena, though I was not born of her body, because she has no body in the sense you mean. I will explain. I have been, by her appointment and my consent, her only significant agent in Britain for 28 years. I have been waiting for you for 7. He looked at her over the rim of the glass. "Waiting," he said. "She told me 7 years ago, almost to the day, that a small boy in Surrey would one day be important to her and to me, and that I would know him when I saw him. She showed me the shape of your face in a dream. I had your bedroom ready 3 days after she showed it to me. I bought the pajamas over a succession of birthdays, each a size larger than the last, and I kept the earlier sizes in case I had misjudged the growth rate and needed to backtrack. I took your measurements by bribing a woman at the school clothing shop in Little Winging. I disliked bribing her. I would have disliked you arriving in ill-fitting pajamas more. You planned the toast," he said carefully. "I planned a great deal more than the toast." He thought about that. Then he said, "Thank you. That is an unusual thing for a child to say to that sort of information," she said, not unkindly. "Most children are not told that they were planned for," Harry said. "I believe I would have liked to be planned for had I known it was possible." Helena put down her book. "Eat your eggs," she said after a moment. "The next conversation is harder." The next conversation was indeed harder. It was about his parents. Helena told him their names, which he had been given before but never as people. And then she told him that his mother had been a witch and his father a wizard, and that neither of them had died in a car crash, and that the lie Aunt Petunia had told him about the car crash was an old wound of Petunia's wrapped around a newer one. And then Helena told him, with the same clean, unhurried voice she had used to tell him about the toast, about the night at Godric's Hollow. He listened, eating the egg slowly because he had learned to eat slowly when he was hearing something difficult. When she was done, he said, "Who was the man?" "A wizard, dark, powerful. He called himself Lord Voldemort, has other names. It is generally considered unwise to say them, but I think that is superstition, and superstition is the enemy of clarity. In any case, he attempted to kill you as well. You were 15 months old. He failed in a way that has never been fully explained, and he was destroyed, or almost so, and you lived. Almost destroyed. Yes, so he could come back." "Yes," said Helena, and she looked for an instant very old. "That is one of the reasons we are sitting at this table." He finished the eggs, then he said, "And the other school. We are coming to that." They came to it over the rest of the morning. Helena brought out a battered atlas and a tin of biscuits, and she sat next to him at the table, and she explained the wizarding world as if it were a political and economic system, which he preferred because he had a great distrust of the word magic as adults tended to use it. She explained the ministry. She explained Hogwarts. She explained the statute of secrecy, and why it was a necessary fiction, and why, like most necessary fictions, it generated about as much danger as it prevented. She explained that there was a letter, already somewhere in the system, addressed to Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey, which would be delivered when he turned 11, and that the letter would probably be redirected here by then, because she had taken steps. "Why not tell the school where I am?" he asked. Helena tapped the table with the edge of her thumb. "Because a headmaster of that school," she said, "placed you at Privet Drive when you were 15 months old for reasons that were, to be charitable, inadequate. He had access to the knowledge we are discussing. He had other options. He chose the one that required the least of him. I do not intend to give him information about you until he has had occasion to examine his choices." "That sounds like anger," Harry said, watching her. "It is anger," Helena said. "It is old anger. I have put it in a box of its own, but the box is not small." He nodded. He had his own boxes. "When will I meet her?" he asked. "Athena." "When she chooses. She does not like to be requested. She will arrive. It may be soon. It may be months." In the event, it was 2 years. The 2 years were, in the private ledger he kept, the first real years of his life. Helena taught him, slowly at first and then with increasing speed, the things she had decided he would need. Languages first, Greek, Latin, French, a small practical grounding in German, because languages opened doors and because Athena, Helena said, preferred a champion who could read the original. Mathematics, because mathematics was the quiet spine of wisdom. Chess, because chess was the best game for teaching a child to think 5 moves ahead about a person who was trying to hurt them. Wand, less practical magic, because his wand would not arrive for several years, and because Helena had been taught in her turn that a witch or wizard who relied on a wand was a witch or wizard who could be disarmed. She taught him history. She taught it him unvarnished. She taught him about the Wizarding Wars and about Grindelwald and about Dumbledore's victory and the parts of that story that were not taught at Hogwarts. And she taught him about the longer history of the relationship between the Wizarding world and the Olympians, which was a history of mutual polite avoidance, punctuated by incidents that neither side liked to discuss. She taught him the names of the 12 and the functions of the 12 and the reputations of the 12, and she told him, without moralizing, which of them she would not trust to mind her cat. She taught him how to fight. This was a surprise. She was a small woman who, if she rose from a chair too quickly, sometimes had to steady herself on the chair's back. She did not have the bulk or the carriage of a fighter. But she taught him as if she had been teaching for decades, which she had. Her approach was calm and unsentimental, and addressed itself not to the question of how to hurt a larger person, but to the question of how a smaller person could redirect a larger person's momentum into a wall. Angle and distance and leverage, she said over and over. Angle and distance and leverage. You will not outmuscle, you will outthink. If you are forced to be in the same room as someone who wants to hurt you, you will arrange the room before they notice the room has been arranged. They worked at it every morning for an hour, in the cleared space in the back storeroom of the shop, on a thick mat she had rolled up against the wall. He grew, by degrees, into a quick child who moved like a quick child and not like a beaten one. This took longer than either of them wanted. Some of the beaten had set into his shoulders by the age of 6, and the shoulders remembered the beaten for a long time. She taught him, too, at the kitchen table, the art of the plain conversation. She had noticed, she told him, that he had the habit of pretending not to know things that he knew because pretending to know less had been a survival tactic at Privet Drive. This habit, if he kept it, would cost him allies. She instructed him to stop. He stopped. It was harder than the fighting. It required him to let people see, at his age and his size, that he had opinions. The first time Helena baited him into correcting her Greek in a conversation about Xenophon, and he corrected her correctly, and she said, without apparent heat, "Good. Do that always, with everyone, even if the everyone is a priest, a headmaster, or a god." The first time he did that, he went to bed feeling as if a skin of brown paper had come off him. About the magic, she started with small things and she stayed with them. She had him put out a candle without touching it, then relight it, then move the flame, then shape the flame into a leaf, and then into the outline of an owl, and then, over a period of months, into an owl that flew across the room as a shape of light, and settled on his shoulder without singeing him. When he complained at 7 that this was not useful, she said mildly that she would decide what was useful and that he would do what she asked. By 8 he could do without a wand. Most of the spells a 4th year at Hogwarts could do with one. He could not cast them as strongly as a 4th year at Hogwarts could, because the wand, Helena explained, was a capacitor, and he would eventually have one. And what he was building now was the dynamo. A dynamo without a capacitor still produced power. It simply could not store it. He was doing a wandless lumos in the dark of the shop at 8:30 when Athena came. He did not hear her arrive. He turned to take a book from a shelf, and she was in the armchair by the stove. She sat as she had sat on the first night, with one ankle crossed over the other knee, in a gray traveling coat, her hair tied back at the nape, but this time she was looking directly at him and not at the door, and he put the book down because his hand could not hold it while his heart was doing what it was doing. "Hello, Harry," Athena said. "Hello," Harry said. "Sit down." He sat in the rocking chair opposite. He did not rock. "You have been well," she said. It was not quite a question. "Yes." "Helena is pleased with you." "She does not say so. She would not. I am telling you because it is information you should have. She will not spoil you. I will occasionally, on those terms, spoil you with praise." He laughed, surprised. "I have come for a long conversation," Athena said. "I am sorry it has taken me 2 years. There have been other matters. I do not intend to make a habit of being absent. I also do not intend to make a habit of being present in the manner of a parent. I am a goddess. I have several thousand responsibilities. One of them is you, perhaps the most interesting at present. You should not let the fact that I am far away most of the time persuade you that I am uninterested in you. You should also not let it persuade you that I will be there to rescue you from every mistake. I will not. I will be there to rescue you from the mistakes you cannot see, where they would kill you, and I will sometimes be there to advise you, but I will not, as a rule, undo what you choose." He listened. He did not interrupt. "This is a contract," she said, "and it is important to me that you understand it. Will you agree?" "I would like to know what you get out of it," he said. She smiled. It was not a large smile, but it was real, and he had seen few real smiles from adults in his life. "I get," she said, "a mortal mind that I admire bent for a while to my purposes. I get the satisfaction of shaping what is already fine. I get, if I am honest with you, and I will be, the small private pleasure of beating my father at a game he thinks he is winning. I get a champion." "That is more honest than I expected," he said. "It will be throughout. We will not do riddles. I dislike riddles. They are for poets and for gods with less on their minds." "All right," he said. "There is a matter," she said, "that Helena and I have argued about for 7 years. I will tell you now because you are old enough to hear it, and because the not telling of it is what damaged you most in one of the futures I watched. There is a prophecy. It concerns you and the wizard who killed your parents." Harry went still. "I will recite it," she said. "I will then explain what I think of it. You will have opinions. I would like to hear them." She recited it. She recited it simply, without theatrical pauses. The words were the words he would later hear in various dramatic voices from various adults, and he would always, in his head, hear them first in Athena's clear, plain tone, and he would be grateful for the rest of his life that he had heard them that way first. "Now," she said when she was done, "you are 6, nearly 9. You are being told by a goddess that a murder-crazed half-blood has marked you for death, and that one of you must die at the other's hand. I do not imagine this is pleasant." "It is not," Harry said. His voice was smaller than he liked. "I would like to argue against its inevitability. Prophecies are strange. They are not, as wizarding opinion often has it, unbreakable. They are not, as wizarding opinion sometimes has it, also unavoidable. They describe a thread in the loom. The loom is large. If one thread is cut, another may be woven. However, this particular thread has been well anchored by choices already made, in particular by the wizard himself, who attempted to kill you and thereby marked you as his equal, as the prophecy says. In my judgment, he will not stop. He will try again. We must be ready. When I say we, I do not mean I will fight him for you. You will fight him if it comes to that. I will train you to fight him. I will stand with you when it is legal for a goddess to stand. The distinction matters." "Why tell me?" Harry said, and his voice had steadied. "Because in the version of the world where this is kept from you, you learn it at 15, from a man who has loved you in his way and failed you in many others, and the learning breaks something in you that does not fully mend. I do not intend that. Also because you have asked me to be honest, and I have agreed." He sat for a moment with his hands flat on the arms of the rocking chair. Then he did briefly what he had not done in front of an adult since the night Helena had taken him from Privet Drive. He cried. Not loudly. He cried in the way a child cries who has been told a terrible true thing and who does not want to be embarrassed by having been told it. He cried for perhaps 2 minutes. Athena did not speak. She did not move. She sat with the absolute still attention of a person who considered weeping to be, on balance, a reasonable response to hard news. When he was done, she handed him a clean folded handkerchief from somewhere inside the coat. The handkerchief smelled faintly of olive leaves. "Thank you," he said. "I am sorry," she said. "You do not need to be." "I was not apologizing," Athena said. "I was expressing regret. The two are different, and you will need to learn the difference because a goddess who apologizes owes, and I cannot afford to owe." He nodded. "I have a question," he said. "Ask. Can you kill him for me?" Why not? Because of the terms under which my kind are permitted to act in this world. Because the prophecy speaks of you and of him. Because the version of you that emerges from having me do it is not a version of you that I would be proud of, and I intend, Harry, to be proud of you. He looked at her. His cheeks were still damp, but his eyes were steady. "Then I will do it," he said. "I thought you would say that. When? When you are ready, we will know. Until then we are, as I said, training." She stayed the rest of the day. She read to him from the Odyssey. He had not known gods did such things, and he had not known that the Odyssey was so funny in places. Helena's translation had been careful and sober, and she ate a pear as if for the look of it, and she drank a small cup of tea. When she rose to leave, she took his face very lightly between her palms, and she looked at him, and she said, "You are mine. I am yours. That is what this is. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Then go to bed soon. Helena's lessons continue in the morning." She left as quietly as she had come. That night Helena sat up with him for an hour, saying nothing, her hand on his back between the shoulder blades. And she did not tell him he was all right, because he was not all right. And she did not promise him that he would be all right, because she did not make promises she could not keep. She simply stayed, and her hand was warm, and in the morning the lesson was Latin declension. And the lesson was easier than Latin declension usually was, because his eyes were clearer. The antagonist subplot, which he would come to understand only later, moved at its own pace in those years. A man in a tartan dressing gown, sitting up alone in a circular office at the top of a Scottish castle, received in his hand each year on the 31st of July a sheet of parchment with a name and an address. The sheet was enchanted to write itself, using a complex procedure the headmaster had helped refine in his youth. For 10 years it wrote the same name and the same address. For 10 years the address was the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. On the 11th year, the address changed. The headmaster looked at the new address for a long time. It said in the crisp copperplate the quill always used, above the shop, Ashworth Books, 12 Candlemaker Row, Edinburgh. Said the headmaster to himself, and he went to the window. Minerva McGonagall had been the one to hand him the parchment. She had read it, of course, she always did. She stood now with her arms folded across her chest, and the expression she wore when she was willing herself not to say "I told you so." She had not, as it happened, told him so, but she had wanted to on several occasions, and the wanting had settled in her jaw. 12 Candlemaker Row, Dumbledore said. A bookshop, McGonagall said. I know the one. I have bought from it. Antiquarian. The owner is a civil woman of 50-odd, reserved, no known family. Her name is Ashworth. And the ward on Privet Drive. Gone, Albus. It has been gone for 2 years. I cannot find when it was undone. I cannot find who undid it. I can only find that it is not there. He said nothing. Albus. Yes, Minerva. You told me when you put that child with Lily's sister that the ward would hold for as long as he called that house home. I said that, yes. It clearly has not. It clearly has not, Dumbledore agreed. Then where has he been? He has, it seems, been somewhere we could not find him. And you did not look. I looked, said Dumbledore, and he did not turn from the window. I did not look hard. I was, I believed, safeguarding him by not looking hard, if I could not find him, nor could less benign parties. McGonagall let that sit. Very well, she said. He is found. What do we do? We send him his letter, said Dumbledore. We invite him to school. We treat him when he arrives exactly as we would treat any other first year. And we pay Minerva close and honest attention. The child has had a life we did not plan for him. I am not sure whether to be relieved or alarmed, perhaps both. Alarmed, McGonagall said. Yes, I think so. He stayed at the window a long time after she left. He did not know, he had no way to know, that in a small flat above a bookshop at the corner of Candlemaker Row, a gray-eyed goddess had put her hand on a boy's head 6 years ago and said, "He will come to you on his own terms or not at all," and that the terms had been written down, signed in 2 hands, and filed, as it were, with the owls. The Draken came in the summer of Harry's 10th year. They went to a cottage near Tintagel for a fortnight in June, because Helena said it was time, and Harry said he had been wondering when they would travel. They walked on the cliffs. They ate pasties. They read at length in the evenings. On the 5th day, Helena said, very casually, over fish and chips on the harbor wall, "There is a cave about an hour south of here. You and I will go there tomorrow at first light. There is a creature in it. It will not eat you. It is not that kind of creature. It will test you. I will not help. I will watch. Athena has asked me not to help. If you need help, I will help anyway, and she will be displeased, but she will not be as displeased as I would be if I let you come to grief because I was afraid of her. Do you understand?" "Yes," Harry said, around a chip. "Are you afraid?" "A little." "Good," Helena said. "Afraid people pay attention." At first light, they walked along the cliff path and down a flight of uneven stone steps cut into the rock, and along a pebble beach, and into the mouth of a cave that opened southeast into the gray morning. Helena went in with him. She set her lantern on a shelf of rock, and then she sat down on a flat stone with her back against the cave wall, and she folded her arms in her lap, and she said, quite gently, "Walk on." He walked on. The cave went back a surprising distance. The light from Helena's lantern fell behind him. He lit his own in his palm, wand Leslie, a small, steady glow. The walls were wet. The air tasted of iron. Somewhere ahead of him something moved very slightly, in the way a very large animal moves when it is breathing. He came around a curve in the rock and stopped. It was not large as drakens went. Helena had been careful. It was perhaps 15 feet long, its coils heaped against the back wall of the cave like a length of dark rope. Its scales were the color of wet shale. Its eyes were the luminous yellow of a new moon. It lifted its head very slowly when he came into view, and it considered him with the considered patience of a thing that did not have to hurry. He considered it back. He had read about drakens. He had read about them in 2 languages. He knew several things about them that the average English wizard did not. He knew, for instance, that a draken's vision was exquisite in low light and poor at the peripheries, that a draken, when it struck first with a breath of mist and only second with its teeth, because the mist made the prey stagger, that a draken was a mostly patient creature that would prefer, if offered the choice, to be left alone. He set his palm light down on a rock. He held both his hands out in front of him, fingers open, in a posture that Helena had taught him and that he had practiced against empty air. "Good morning," he said in Greek. The draken's head tilted. He took 1 step forward, then another. Then he stopped because he had reached the invisible edge of what the draken considered its own space, and he could feel the edge the way he had once in Surrey felt the edge of Vernon's temper. He did not cross it. "I have been sent to see you," he said. "I am Athena's. I will not attack you. I have a question. If you will hear it, if you would prefer not to hear it, I will leave." The draken's tongue came out, tasting him. Then it spoke. He had not known drakens spoke. It spoke in Greek, in a sound like wet velvet being drawn over stone. "Athena's," it said. "Yes, I smell her on you. Ask. Why are you in this cave?" The draken seemed, for a moment, surprised. Drakens were rarely asked that question. They were usually asked other things. "I was placed here," it said, "to test the young ones who come. I dislike it. I would prefer to be in my own country, which is an island south of here that has no name on your maps. I am old. I have earned my island. What is the test? Traditionally, to see if you will fight me. If I do not fight you, then you will pass. And if I fight you, then you will be injured. The injury is not usually fatal. I have orders." Harry considered. "If I ask her to send you home," he said, "and she does, will you consider yourself to have failed her?" "I will consider," the draken said after a pause, "that you passed the test by being able to see me as something other than a test. Then I will ask her, please wait here, I will come back." He turned and walked out of the cave. He walked back along the pebbles. He found Helena on her rock. Her eyes were very bright. "He would like to go home," he said. "Would he indeed?" said Helena. "I would like to help him." "She is listening," Helena said. Ask her. He asked Athena, silently, in the grammar of the cool place at the back of his neck. He asked her whether she would object to the Draken being released. He asked it politely, and he asked it clearly, and he gave his reasons. She answered after perhaps 3 seconds. Yes, she said, tell him to go home. He went back into the cave. The Draken was where he had left it. You may go, he said. She has agreed. Please take your time. The cliff path is steep, and I would not want you to be seen by local fishermen. The Draken's head rose. It looked at him for a long moment. Champion, it said, if ever you need me, say my name 3 times into a south wind, and I will come. It told him its name. He remembered it. He has never, to this day, had cause to use it, but he carries it with him the way a man carries a key to a house he has not yet needed to unlock. The Draken moved past him. It moved with astonishing grace for its bulk, a long dark ribbon of animals sliding between the rocks. At the cave mouth it paused and dipped its head to Helena, as one might to a respected elder, and Helena bowed back, and then the Draken went on down the beach and into the surf, and the surf received it, and it was gone. Helena stood up. She dusted off her coat. She said, that was better than any of the 3 answers I had prepared for. You had prepared answers. I always prepare answers, Harry. It is a habit. They walked back to the cottage. They did not talk on the way. At the cottage, Helena made tea, and they sat on the bench outside, and after a while Helena said very carefully, there will come a moment, not for a long time, but it will come, when you will have to kill something that is intelligent and that intends you harm. It will not be a Draken in a cave that would rather be home. I have trained you so that you can. I have trained you also so that you will know always that there was another option and that you considered it, and that it was not available. Can you hold both those things at once? I think so. Good, she said. That is the lesson. The letter arrived on the 31st of July, on his 11th birthday. It came not by a flood of owls into a chimney, but by a single owl to the shop window in the afternoon while they were eating birthday cake. The owl was a handsome tawny that looked faintly embarrassed to be carrying anything so ceremonial. Helena let it in. It perched on the back of the chair opposite Harry and extended its leg. Harry took the envelope. He turned it over. He read the address. Mr. H. Potter, the upstairs flat, Ashworth Books, 12 Candlemaker Row, Edinburgh. He met Helena's eyes. Helena's eyes held what they had held on the night she took him from Privet Drive, a small, fierce gladness like a lamp cupped in a hand. He broke the seal. He read the letter. Then he put it down on the table beside the cake, and he poured himself another cup of tea, and he said, "Now we choose." "Yes," said Helena, "now we choose." Chapter 3. The letter and first lessons they did not decide the same evening. Helena, when asked a question like whether a child should attend a school for 7 years, refused to decide it in under a night. They ate the cake. They washed the plates. Harry went to bed at a reasonable hour because he had learned over the past 5 years that Helena's strategic instincts improved by 7% when he was asleep in the next room. In the morning, she poured him coffee. He looked at the coffee. "You are 11, Helena said. "Today you can have a cup of coffee. You may not like it. You are permitted to dislike it." He tried it. He disliked it. She took the cup away without comment and made him tea instead and handed him a croissant from a bakery 4 streets over. She sat down across from him with the same book she had been reading for 3 years. "Reasons to go," she said. "Reasons not to go, you first." "Reasons to go," Harry said. 1. I will meet other wizards and witches my age, and I need to. You have taught me. I need peers, too. I will learn what is there to learn, even if I have learned some of it already, because there will be pieces I have not learned, and because I will be more useful to her if I know the curriculum of the school that produces most of the wizards I will eventually have to work with. 3. I will acquire allies. I will also acquire enemies, but I will acquire enemies either way, so I may as well acquire them in a place where I can also acquire allies. 4. There is a prophecy. The people who can help me understand it, and the people who want me dead on account of it will all be easier to find from inside Hogwarts than from inside this flat." Helena drank her tea. "Reasons not to go," Harry said. "Yes. 1. I will be watched. Dumbledore will watch me. He will watch me for motives that are not entirely mine. He will try to make me into a piece of a plan that he has had for 10 years. 2. It will hurt you. You have done well not to say so, but this flat will be quiet for 10 months of the year, and I will be elsewhere, and I will miss you. 3. I will be visible. Voldemort's people, whatever is left of them, will know exactly where I sleep. 4. There is a particular instructor at the school, a potions master, who may at any moment decide to take out his quarrel with my dead father on my living person." Helena put down her tea. "You have been reading my correspondence," she said. "Yes. I thought I had better letters than that." "You do. I also read the ones that were not letters, which were the reports you commissioned from 3 separate research contacts whose names, by the way, you overlap in your filing system and which I have accordingly reorganized." She laughed. It was a short, dry laugh that he had never heard from her before. She stood up and she crossed to him and she put her hand on the top of his head and she said quite seriously, "Good boy, go to Hogwarts, go to Hogwarts, with the watching and the prophet and the potions master, with all of it." He nodded. "I am also going to miss you," he said quietly. "I know. I would still rather go. I know that also." They went to Diagon Alley that afternoon. Helena did not send word ahead. She did not write to Dumbledore. She did not write to McGonagall. She put on her long charcoal coat and she took Harry's hand as if he were still 6, although he was 11.5 inches taller than he had been at breakfast, because he was growing in bursts that year, and they apparated together from the back storeroom of the shop to a narrow alley behind the Leaky Cauldron. The Leaky Cauldron was, as advertised, an unremarkable pub. Harry took it in quietly. Tom the barman looked up at them, and with that mild, cataloguing gaze of a man who had taken the measure of every wizard in Britain over the course of 40 years of wiping glasses, gave Helena a small nod. He did not notice Harry in particular. Helena had dressed him plainly and had combed his hair differently and had, gently, using a finger's worth of makeup from her own small collection, blurred the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead into something that looked, at a glance, like a fading birthmark. He had not asked her to. She had offered. He had agreed, because he intended to decide the moment of his own public arrival, and the moment was not now. They passed through the pub to the bricked wall. Helena counted the bricks. Harry watched her fingers. The bricks folded away with a sound like dry corn unfolding. Diagon Alley was a shock, even after 5 years of preparation. It was bright and loud and full of people who had clearly been loud their entire lives without anyone telling them to be quiet. And it smelled of smoke and sugar and oil and owl and something faintly sulphurous. And there were children running. And there were owls calling. And Harry stood for one long, deliberate minute just inside the gate and watched it, because he did not want to walk into a place until he had walked into it with his eyes. "Take your time," said Helena beside him. "I am taking my time," said Harry. "Good." Gringotts was a white marble cliff at the end of the alley. They joined the queue. The queue was surprisingly brisk. Goblins, Helena had told him, worked at an efficient pace because they had learned 1,000 years ago that wizards were more polite when kept moving. Their goblin, when they reached him, was a lean, stern person with a long nose and a brass nameplate that read GRIPSAIL. "Mr. Potter," Gripsel said with no expression at all. "Miss Ashworth, which vaults today, 387, said Helena, "and 711. Gripsel looked up. 711, he said slowly, "is reserved." "By authorization of the reserving party," Helena said. Gripsel considered her. Then he considered Harry. He considered Harry for longer than a goblin ordinarily considers an 11-year-old. Harry returned the consideration without flinching, because Helena had also taught him how to be considered. "I see," said Gripsail, and he slid off his stool. "Come along, then." The cart ride was everything Helena had said it would be: fast, dark, absurd, pleasant in the way a roller coaster was pleasant. Harry allowed himself to grin. He had not been on a roller coaster. Dudley had been 3 times and had come home sick each time. Harry had always thought the sickness sounded, on balance, worth the grinning. Vault 387 was modest and familiar to Helena, who had been visiting it on Harry's behalf since he was 6. It contained the thin middle-class inheritance of 2 young wizards who had died with most of their lives ahead of them, a reasonable quantity of galleons, a small case of rings and chains that had been lilies, and a stack of books, a few of which were inscribed with James Potter's cramped handwriting. Harry stood at the threshold and looked at the stack of books for a while. He did not that day take them out. He took a small bag of galleons and a single silver ring that had been his mother's, a plain band that he slid onto a leather thong and tied under his shirt. Helena did not comment. Gripsail, waiting with the patience of a stone, closed the vault after him. Vault 711 was a much older door. It was much further down. It smelled, when Gripsail opened it with a key that he produced from inside his waistcoat, and that glowed faintly, when he handled it, of olive oil and paper. Inside it was not large. It was the size of Helena's storeroom. Against the far wall stood a wooden desk with a brass lamp on it. In the center of the floor, on a small plinth, lay a leather-bound journal, blank to the touch, and beside it a cloth-wrapped parcel about the length of a man's forearm. Harry looked at Helena. "Open the parcel," Helena said, "not the journal." He unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a short Greek sword, a xiphos, bronze and plain, its scabbard of polished leather with a single small owl burned into the throat. The hilt, when he took it, fit his hand as if it had been made for an 11-year-old and not for a grown soldier. "It will grow with you," Helena said. She asked a smith some years ago to make it. The smith was unwise enough to ask how it was to be paid for. She explained. The smith made it free of charge. "Do I take it today?" "Number you take it when you come of age in her service, which will not be today. Today you see it, that is the visit." He rewrapped the cloth. He put it back on the plinth. He looked with only the quickest flicker at the journal. "You are not ready for the journal either," Helena said, "but you will be sooner than you are for the sword. Leave it." "Gripsail, thank you." "Miss Ashworth," said Gripsail, and he shut the vault. They came up into sunlight. "Now," Helena said, "a wand." Ollivander's was a narrow shop that smelled of wood shavings and, surprisingly, of raspberry jam, because Ollivander had a lunch habit. Ollivander himself was a pale, thin man with eyes like polished moonstones, and he was, Harry understood from the way the man's pupils went very wide, frightened. "Mr. Potter," said Ollivander, "Mr. Ollivander." "I remember your mother's wand," Ollivander said. 10¼ inches, swishy willow. Excellent wand for charm work. "I remember your father's. 11 inches, mahogany, pliable. Excellent for transfiguration." "I remember, please do not," said Harry, not unkindly, and Ollivander stopped and blinked twice and reconsidered his script. "A new wand, then," he said. "A new wand," Harry agreed. "I am told by my guardian that you have on hand one that you did not make." Ollivander's face did something complicated. "Yes," he said, "that is correct. It appeared in my stock a week ago. I do not know how. I recorded it in my ledger because it is my habit to record everything. I then attempted to unmake it because I am not accustomed to wands I did not make, and I failed. I then left it on the shelf because it was, in the failure, clearly not mine to unmake. May I ask who made it, Mr. Potter?" "You may ask," said Harry. "I will not tell you." "Would you show it to me, please?" Ollivander shuffled to a shelf on the far side of the shop. He returned with a long, slender box. Inside, on black velvet, lay a pale wand of olive wood, 10¾ inches, with a small grain like the inside of a shell. Ollivander lifted it as one might lift a sleeping mouse. Harry took it. It was not the wand that reacted first. It was the shop. The candles on Ollivander's counter flickered as if a door had been opened somewhere in the building. A small bell on the door behind them rang without any hand touching it. A stack of wand boxes, 12 deep, reshelved itself in alphabetical order by wood type, which Ollivander had been meaning to do for 18 years. Then the wand at last produced light. It did not spark. It did not throw a firework. It glowed steadily, the color of noon under a laurel tree, and the glow wrapped itself around Harry's arm up to the elbow and then, very politely, went back into the wand and waited. "Oh," said Ollivander faintly. "Olive wood," Helena said. "Core." "A single gray owl feather," Ollivander said. "I know this because I can feel it through the wood. I do not know what owl. I have never worked with owl feather. I did not know it could be done." "It can," Helena said, "with some help." "Thank you, Mr. Ollivander. How much?" "I did not make it. You housed it. You have earned a fee." Ollivander named a modest sum. Helena paid him in galleons. She added a silver sickle as a tip and said, as they were leaving, "You will, of course, tell no one what you have seen here today." "I would not dream of it," said Ollivander, and meant it, because he had not seen a wand of this kind in 40 years of making wands, and he intended to go home that evening and drink a brandy and consider, for some time, his own smallness in the pattern of things. They bought his robes at Madame Malkin's. They bought his cauldron and his scales, and his brass telescope at 3 separate shops. They bought, at Flourish and Blot's, the set books and a stack of additional books that were not the set books, because Helena said that people who read only the set books deserved the education they received. She bought him, separately and with a small conspirator's smile, a slim volume called The Craft of Argument by a man called Aristotle. At Madame Malkin's, Harry had his one encounter of the day with another child. He was standing on the fitting stool while Madame Malkin tacked up his hem, trying not to shift, when a boy of his own age was shown in and placed on the stool next to him. The boy was blond and slim and pale and had the careful groomed look of a family portrait that had decided to step down from its frame for the day. He looked at Harry. Harry looked at him. The boy's assessment took perhaps 2 seconds. "Hogwarts," the boy said. "Yes." "First year." "Yes." "You are with the Ashworth woman," the boy said. "My father speaks of her sometimes. He says she is a recluse. I have not decided yet whether that was flattering." "Your father," said Harry pleasantly, "sounds like a man whose observations one should record for later." The boy blinked. "My name is Draco Malfoy," he said after a beat. "Harry. Just Harry. Just Harry." He had decided, on the way to Madame Malkin's, not to volunteer his surname to any child he did not know. He saw Draco's eyes narrow and flick over his forehead. He watched Draco consider the blurred mark, compare it against the official portrait in his father's study, reject the identification, and store the possibility for later. Draco was cleverer than Harry had expected. Harry adjusted. "What house do you think you'll be in?" Draco asked. "I expect I'll be placed in whichever is most useful to me," Harry said, which was not the Slytherin answer, and was not the Gryffindor answer, and was not quite the Ravenclaw answer, but was an answer that Draco Malfoy had not prepared a follow-up to. They did not speak again. Draco was finished before Harry and stepped down from his stool and left, giving Harry one last look as he passed through the door, a look that was equal parts interest and resentment. Helena, watching from the shop window, said only, "Good." "He will dislike me," Harry said. "Yes." "Is that good?" "Yes. Sometimes. It is better to be disliked intelligently by a Malfoy than to be liked stupidly by one. Come, one more stop." The last stop was a small shop at the alley's far end that Harry had not heard her mention. The shop had no sign. The window held a single brass bowl of olives. Helena knocked on the door 3 times, paused, knocked twice more, and the door was opened by a woman in a neat maroon dress who took one look at Harry, touched her forehead, and stepped aside to let them in. Inside, the shop sold herbs, inks, and certain small clay objects. Helena bought him a small clay owl, no larger than a hen's egg, which sat in her palm with its wings folded and its eyes closed. The woman in maroon wrapped it in tissue paper with great care. "For when you cannot think of anything else," Helena said as they left. "What does it do? When you need it, you will know. Do not break it before then." He put the owl in the inner pocket of his coat, next to his mother's ring. He touched them both once lightly, because he had started recently to feel that his pockets needed an inventory. Far to the east, across sea and land, in a small forest in Albania that had been paced and paced again by the shell of a man who had been, until a few weeks ago, a promising young defense candidate at Hogwarts. A voice that was not his own spoke behind his face. The voice was thin and dry and precise, and was capable of articulating, with considerable intelligence, the distinction between a plan that had been interrupted by a surprise and a plan that had been invalidated by one. "The boy's thread has shifted," the voice said. The body of Quirinus Quirrell, who had been a plump young man only a few months ago and was now a thin, shaking one, stood with his back against a beech tree and did not answer. Quirrell had stopped answering his passenger 2 weeks ago except when directly addressed. "He is not in Surrey," the voice said. "He has not been in Surrey for 5 years. I did not notice. I should have." "Perhaps he is dead," Quirrell whispered. "He is not dead, I would feel it. He is hidden by an interested party. The interested party has taste. The hiding is elegant. And an old one, a dark one, neither. An inconvenient one." The voice was silent for a moment. "Greek," it said at last thoughtfully. "Olive, owl, that kind of interested party. Gods, do not patronize me, Quirinus. They do sometimes when a mortal is worth the effort. I will need to think." The voice fell silent. Quirrell pushed himself off the beech tree and walked on through the forest, with the peculiar hitched gait of a man whose knees had begun to know that they were dying. Behind his eyes, the wraith of Lord Voldemort, who had, over the past 2 weeks, not retrieved a key to the Philosopher's Stone but had set its retrieval in motion, who had not yet moved the diary back into England but had written the letter that would arrange the move, who had been doing 3 things at once for the first time in a decade and was pleased with himself for it, adjusted one of the 3 things. The stone was no longer the prize. The stone was a shadow across a door. The prize now was the boy. Far to the west, on a Scottish platform, Harry Potter stepped onto the Hogwarts Express on the morning of the 1st of September without fanfare, without a crowd of cameras, without a swarm of Weasleys, because Helena had timed their arrival at King's Cross for 20 minutes before the train left and had not written to anyone about it in advance. She kissed him on the top of the head. She said, "Letters, often." "Often," he agreed. "Eat the sandwiches. Do not leave them in your trunk." "I will not. Be kind where you can, be clever where you must, be neither where it helps nor. I will remember." He stepped up into the train. He found a compartment at the rear that was empty, put his trunk up and sat. He had a book. He began to read. 10 minutes before departure, the compartment door slid open and a girl stood in the doorway. She was small, with bushy brown hair and front teeth she had not yet grown into. She had the air of someone who had burst into about 8 compartments already in the last 5 minutes and had prepared a small, efficient speech for each one. "Have you seen a toad?" she said. "A boy down the way has lost one. His name is Neville. He is very upset, and I have decided to help him find it, although privately I consider the decision to bring a toad to school to be questionable." "I have not seen a toad," said Harry. "May I help?" The girl paused. She had clearly been expecting to be dismissed. "You may," she said. "Thank you. Have you checked under your seat?" "I have not. 1 moment." He knelt. He looked under both seats. No toad. He stood. He picked up his book, which was Aristotle, marked his place and shut it. "I am Harry," he said. "Hermione Granger," said the girl. "The Craft of Argument," he said, showing her the cover. "Aristotle." Not on the Hogwarts list. Do you like him? I've only read the Nicomachean Ethics, Hermione said, and then helplessly, because she had clearly expected him to ask her who Aristotle was. Do you know the Nicomachean Ethics? I do. I prefer the politics. Shall we find the toad? He stepped out into the corridor with her. They found Neville Longbottom, a round-faced boy with his sleeves damp from wiping his eyes, 3 compartments up. They searched over the next half hour about 2/3 of the train. They found the toad, eventually, asleep in the folded jumper of an unimpressed older girl who had not realized the toad was in her compartment at all. They returned it to Neville. Neville, through a grateful cascade of words, asked Harry if he might sit with them, and Hermione, before Harry could answer, said, "Yes, obviously," and steered them back toward Harry's compartment, because it was the least crowded, because she had already decided, in the way she decided things, that this boy with Aristotle was an acceptable seatmate. The compartment door slid open once more before the train left. The first time, it was a pale, red-haired boy with a sandwich in his hand and a look of resolute, cheerful entitlement on his face, and he said, "Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is full." Harry looked at Hermione, who was reading the jacket of one of his books. Harry looked at Neville, who was carefully feeding a crumb to his toad. Harry looked at the red-haired boy. "Everywhere else is full," Harry said mildly. The red-haired boy blinked. "Pretty full," he said. "Anyway, I'm Ron Weasley. You're Harry Potter, aren't you?" Hermione's head came up. Neville's head came up. Harry's eyebrows did not move. "I am," Harry said. "How did you know?" "My brothers said." "Everyone knows. Can I see your scar?" "No," said Harry politely. "I'd rather you didn't." Ron's mouth opened a little. He had clearly not rehearsed for number. After a moment he said, "Right, all right. Well, I'll sit." "There are 3 empty compartments at the far end of the train," said Hermione, without looking up from the book. "I noticed during the toad search. You might be more comfortable there." Ron looked from her to Harry to Neville to the toad. "Fine," he said. "Suit yourselves." He left. He slid the door shut with more force than was necessary. In the corridor his ears had gone red. Hermione, without looking up, said, "He will tell his brothers, and his brothers will tell a great many people that you were rude to him." "I was not rude." "You were not, but he is not going to say that." "Does it matter?" Harry thought about it. "It will matter to a great many people who do not matter to me," he said. "That is fine." Neville quietly said, "I've never said no to anyone before." "You will get better at it," said Harry. "Have a sandwich." They ate the sandwiches. They read, or leafed through each other's books, or watched the country go by, the flat gray-green of East Anglia, then the hills of the borders, then at last, as the light went thick and gold, the high country of the Highlands, where the sky did something to the hills that Harry had never seen before, and that made him briefly, wordlessly, glad to be alive. Hermione, who had begun by asking him questions about Aristotle, moved on to questions about Greek, and then, in the manner of people who have found a subject that is not usually available to them, to questions about small stars Harry had learned to light in his palm. He showed her one. She did not ask how he did it. She asked why it worked. It was the right question. He liked her for asking it. Neville, at one point, asked Harry to help him unstick the latch on his trunk, and Harry did. And in the doing of it they had a small conversation about Neville's grandmother, who sounded formidable, and about Neville's parents, who Harry already knew about from one of Helena's careful letters, and whom Neville, bravely and once, mentioned without looking at his hands. By the time the train slowed into Hogsmeade, Harry had 2 friends, one enemy of some potential and a very clear sense of the shape of the evening ahead. He pulled on his robes. He checked the clay owl in his pocket. He checked his mother's ring. He touched, without looking at it, the mark on the inside of his wrist. "We are here," he thought, into the cool place at the back of his neck. "So I see," Athena answered, amused. "Go and be sorted, champion." Chapter 4. The sorting and the shape of the year Hogwarts at night from the water was the kind of view that adults kept to themselves for later. Harry sat in a boat with Hermione and Neville, and a small boy called Terry Boot, whose first words had been about the moons of Jupiter, and whose second had been a quiet, relieved noise when Hermione had begun to answer him. And the four of them crossed the Black Lake toward a castle that sat on its cliff like a sentence that had been written with a heavy pen. Hagrid, huge and gentle at the prow of the lead boat, was singing an old rowing song under his breath in a voice that carried across the water to every boat and made it, for a moment, seem ridiculous that anyone should have been afraid of anything. Harry looked at Hagrid for some time. Hagrid, he knew from Helena's briefings, was Dumbledore's most loyal man at the school, and one of the most straightforwardly kind of them, and also one of the easiest to pry information from, because kindness and prying went together like a key and a lock. Harry filed this. Hagrid caught him looking and gave him a grin so large that it was impossible not to grin back. So Harry did, and the grinning was, he thought, not in the end a mistake. It was only a gift given knowingly. They came up through the Great Hall 2 by 2. Professor McGonagall had the first years line up in front of the staff table. Harry stood between Hermione, who had her chin up in the specific defiant angle of a bright child in a strange new room, and Neville, who was trembling very slightly in a way that Harry pretended not to notice because pretending not to was what Neville needed. The hat, when McGonagall set it down on the stool, sang a song. Harry listened. The song was witty enough. It described each of the four houses with the bland, diplomatic enthusiasm of a realtor showing flats. He noted the hat did not sing about Gryffindor last, which he had half expected. The song was older than the vanities of any particular alumnus. He noted also the fact that the hat throughout its song was watching him, which was clever because it had no eyes. Names were called. Children went forward. Hats were tried on. Hermione, when her turn came, went up with the swift, terrified bravery of someone who had decided she was going to do this thing whether it was a good idea or not. The hat was on her head for perhaps 15 seconds. It called Ravenclaw, and Hermione, looking surprised and not displeased, went to sit at the blue-banded table. Draco Malfoy went to Slytherin inside of the time it took McGonagall to set the hat down on his head. The hat did not even touch his hair. Harry took that in, too. Neville's turn came. He tripped on the step. He sat. The hat was on him for almost a full minute. Its face, insofar as the hat had won, worked thoughtfully. Then it called Gryffindor, and Neville stumbled to the red-banded table with a face that was somehow both amazed and satisfied, as if the hat had told him a secret he had been waiting all his life to hear. And then, Potter Harry. The hall went quiet. It did not go quiet the way a room goes quiet when a teacher enters. It went quiet in that peculiar falling-off way of 400 simultaneous private conversations, realizing they had all been using the same name. Heads turned. Harry walked up the aisle with his hands loose at his sides and his eyes on McGonagall, because McGonagall was the adult in the room whose reaction he had not yet taken a reading of, and her reaction was, as it turned out, a small private spark of interest behind a very composed face, which was more useful intelligence than any glance at the tables would have given him. He sat on the stool. The hat came down on his head. The hat said in the back of Harry's skull, in the voice of an old man who had been tired for 800 years but was not yet bored, "Well." "Hello," thought Harry politely. "You have work on you. I can smell it. Not on a child your age. That would be unusual. It is not unusual. It is, however, God's. Yes, which one? Athena." Ah, the hat paused. "A long time since I spoke with one of hers. I knew an Ashworth once." "You sorted Helena, Ravenclaw, obviously, would not have been right anywhere else." "Now you." The hat considered him. Harry felt it turn through him as one turns through a filing cabinet, quick and not unkind. Hufflepuff, I will not waste you on, the hat said. You would learn to love the house and be wasted. Slytherin is a narrower shirt than you need. You have the ambition for it, but you do not have the patience to spend 7 years pretending you are not interested in truth, and Slytherin requires that pretending. Gryffindor I could send you to. You would do well. You would also burn what is most useful in you out of you in defending yourself from a set of expectations that do not fit your shape. That leaves Ravenclaw, which is where Helena wants you, which is where I would put you anyway, which I think is where the goddess at the back of your neck is about to nod. She is nodding, said Harry, who had checked. Good. A word, Mr. Potter, before I shout. Yes. The man at the staff table with the turban. Do not touch his turban. Do not look at his turban. Do not let him know that you know there is something under his turban. Not yet. I had noticed, said Harry. Of course you had. I shall enjoy you. Ravenclaw, the hat bellowed the name. Harry took it off. He set it down carefully on the stool because it had been polite to him. He walked to the blue table. The blue table applauded him with the dignified restraint of a house that considered enthusiasm a slightly embarrassing emotion. He saw, at the far end, a Weasley twin lean over from the Gryffindor bench and say something loud that he could not hear, and that made Percy Weasley wince. Hermione at Ravenclaw had saved him a seat. Took you long enough, she said as he sat. Almost a minute. I timed it, 53 seconds, longer than anyone. I'll keep that in mind. He looked up just once at the staff table. Dumbledore at the center was clapping with the benevolent pleasure of a man watching a plan come together, and also with the specific small watchfulness of a man whose plan had just been amended without him. Snape, 2 seats down, was not clapping. Snape was staring at Harry with an expression Harry had prepared himself for, which was an expression of raw, complicated dislike, but which contained also, Harry thought, a thread that Helena had predicted, a man looking at a ghost. Snape's eyes dropped briefly to Harry's left wrist. Harry's sleeve was covering the mark. Snape's eyes came up again, and for just a fraction of a second they were not angry but confused. Then they closed down again. Quirrell, on the other hand, was studying his own plate with a great and trembling attention, as if the plate might be an animal that was about to speak. The sorting finished. The feast began. Harry ate with the appetite of an 11-year-old who had not had dinner and who had been briefed on Hogwarts puddings for 5 years by a woman who did not lie about puddings. He made conversation with the older Ravenclaws around him. He asked, with the clear, sincere interest that Helena had taught him, 3 good questions about the library and 1 careful question about prefect duties. He filed names and faces. He did not, after the first look up at the staff table again. He had the shape of it. Percy Weasley, further down at a different table, had been watching him in a distracted, proprietary manner for 20 minutes. Harry had also noted that. He chose to leave it alone for now. After the feast, as the prefects led first-years up to the towers, Harry let himself be led. The Ravenclaw Tower was a tall, thin building with a spiraling staircase, and a bronze eagle for a knocker that asked questions instead of taking passwords. The first-year dormitory was a circular room with tall, narrow windows and curtains the color of evening sky. His trunk was already at the foot of one of the beds, which was, as far as Harry could tell, because the castle had put it there. He approved of castles that put trunks where they went without asking. He sat on the bed. He took off his shoes. He slid the clay owl from his coat pocket into the inside pocket of his pajamas, because Helena had been specific about where it should be at night. He lay in a bed in a Scottish castle under a painted ceiling showing the stars of that year's October, and he thought calmly about every adult he had seen at the staff table, and about the wraith on the back of Quirrell's head, and about the headmaster whose smile had hid under its serenity, a small rapid recalculation, and he slept. In the circular office at the top of the astronomy tower, the headmaster was not sleeping. "He is in Ravenclaw," said McGonagall, who had not yet removed her hat. "I am surprised. I had expected Gryffindor." "Ravenclaw is Helena Ashworth's house," said Dumbledore, who was standing at the window with his hands behind his back. "I am not surprised." Albus: "Yes." He walked past the door of this office tonight and did not glance at it. Every Potter before him glanced at it. He walked up to the hat with his hands loose. He did not look for you during his sorting. He did not look for you during the feast. He ate steadily. He made polite conversation with 3 older students whose usefulness to him, as a first year in Ravenclaw, is non-trivial. He did not ask a single question that an 11-year-old would have asked. He asked questions that a 30-year-old who had done his reading would ask. Albus: "Yes, Minerva. I have been on your behalf, going to considerable lengths these past 7 years to believe that you had only failed to locate a child. I will admit tonight that I do not know a child like this. I would like to know, where has he been?" "I do not know exactly," said Dumbledore, and the admission cost him something. "I believe Ashworth has been raising him. She has had the resources to do so. She has had the discretion. She has had, as she has always had, rather more goodwill than she has advertised. She has hated you for 25 years. Yes. Why? Because I made a decision 25 years ago that she thought I should have made differently. The Harry decision." "No," said Dumbledore quietly, "an older one." McGonagall looked at him a long time. "I dislike surprises, Albus," she said at last. "So do I. Will she let us teach him?" "She already has," Dumbledore said. "She chose not to remove him from Britain. She chose not to refuse the letter. She chose to send him here. That is a choice. I do not intend to squander it. Minerva, tomorrow we begin the year exactly as planned. The stone goes on the 3rd floor. The obstacles are installed. The headmaster, charming and distant, leaves the first years largely to their heads of house. The head of Ravenclaw, Phileas, is given a very light briefing about the new boy and asked to watch without interfering. If Tom Riddle comes for the stone, he will come through our carefully laid puzzles because I have designed those puzzles to catch him, and if, in passing, they also catch a first year who has been prepared by Ashworth, then he becomes your tool. Then he becomes what he has been training to become," said Dumbledore. "I did not make him a champion, Minerva. I only allowed that he might be won by refusing to stop it. I will take credit for neither." McGonagall took her hat off at last and set it on the arm of the chair. "Just so you know, Albus," she said, "I like the boy. I am going to watch him. If I see you use him, I will say so. I will say so to you, and I will say so to him. I would expect no less." He sat down opposite her finally, and he took out a small bowl of lemon drops, and they sat for a while and did not speak, and then, because there was nothing else to be done tonight, they went to bed. The first week of lessons came and went. Harry moved through it the way one moves through a series of known rooms in the dark, quickly, confidently, making small corrections when the furniture had been moved. In charms, Professor Flitwick tested the first years on a simple levitation charm. Hermione did it on the first try. The feather lifted 3 feet and came down again. Harry did it on the first try as well, but he made his feather hover at eye height and spin once clockwise, slowly, before setting it down, because he had wanted to see whether he could. Flitwick, delighted, gave him a private exercise to do later. Harry said thank you and made a note to take the private exercise seriously, because Flitwick was the head of his house, and because Flitwick had the rare gift of rewarding competence with more work, which was the only kind of reward Harry wanted. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall watched him with an attention he was aware of. He matched the class pace precisely. He did not turn his match into a perfect needle on the first try, although he could have. He turned it into a serviceable one, the kind of serviceable needle that allowed the child in the next seat to feel that they had done a comparable thing, which Helena had told him was, sometimes, the kinder choice. McGonagall watched him work. McGonagall said nothing. McGonagall, in his grade book, wrote one small, careful question mark next to his name and underlined it. In potions, Snape called on him before he had sat down. "Potter," said Snape, and the word was pronounced as one pronounces a name in a court registry. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormhood?" Harry set his bag down. He did not look for his book. He said, "Draught of living death, sir." "What is the difference between a monk's hood and a wolfsbane?" "They are the same plant, sir, also called aconite." "Where would you look, Potter, if I asked you to find me a bezoar?" "In the stomach of a goat, sir." "Or in a school of wizards in the private stores of a potions master, who will usually keep two, one for himself and one for the infirmary, to avoid the awkwardness of a shared jar." Snape had not blinked through any of this. He did not blink now. He said, in a voice that was very quiet and very careful, "Sit down, Potter." Harry sat down. He did not smile. He was too well trained to smile. Several of the Gryffindors at the far side of the dungeon who had been sorted that morning exchanged glances. Neville, in particular, was looking at Harry with an awe that Harry would later, gently and in private, ask him not to look at him with. Snape moved on. He taught the class. He taught well, Harry noticed, with the contempt stripped off. When Snape was teaching potions and not conducting an interrogation, he was a clean and careful teacher. Harry filed this also. At the end of the class, Snape said, "Potter, a moment." Harry stayed. The other students filed out. Hermione at the door gave him a single "Do you need me to stay" look, and Harry gave her a single "No, go, thank you" shake of the head. When they were alone, Snape stood behind his desk and folded his arms. "You are not your father," Snape said. "No, sir," said Harry. "You are not the boy I was expecting." "No, sir." "Where did you learn the thing with the bezoars?" "In a book, sir." "In a book written by Helena Ashworth, sir. She has a side interest." Snape's eyes went briefly wider, then smaller, and the small was worse. "Show me your left wrist." Harry looked at him. Harry thought about it. Then very slowly he pulled back his sleeve. Snape looked at the mark. He looked at it the way a man looks at a thing he has read about in textbooks and never expected to see. A small muscle in his jaw moved. "She would not have understood this," Snape said low. "She might have," Harry said. "You did not give her the chance to." He had not planned that sentence. It came out of him with the quiet weight of something that had been waiting for years. Snape's eyes, which had been hard, went glassy for a moment. Then he gathered himself. "Get out of my classroom, Potter," he said, and his voice had cracked very slightly around Potter. Harry got out. He went afterward to the library because that was where he had arranged to meet Hermione, and because he needed a flat surface and a book and 10 minutes in a room where no one was watching him. He got there 3 minutes before she did. He chose a table by a window. He laid out his books. He opened the Aristotle. Hermione sat down across from him. "What did he want?" she said. "To look at me," said Harry. "What did he see?" Harry considered. Hermione, in their short acquaintance, had become a person one told things to. He was careful with it. It was new. "A wound," he said at last. And a boy he had not expected to find standing next to it. He did not handle it well. He will do better next time. So will I. Hermione watched him. "Harry." "Yes." "You are 11. Most of the time." How much of the time? He thought about it. "Most," he said. She accepted that for now. "Right," she said, and she opened her own book. "The third-floor corridor." He looked up. "Yes. Why has it been forbidden?" "Why do you ask?" "Because," said Hermione, "the headmaster at the welcome feast announced a specific corridor as out of bounds under pain of painful death." This is so dramatic a phrasing that I do not believe it was deployed by accident. Also because a corridor cannot plausibly be painful death dangerous by accident. If it were simply under repair, it would have been roped off with a polite sign. Also because I walked past the third-floor corridor yesterday and the air near its door smelled of warm dog. Harry, who had been about to say something, closed his mouth. "Warm dog," he said. "Yes, a large warm dog, a dog large enough to be worth mentioning. possibly 3 warm dogs. The smell was, I would say, threefold. A 3-headed dog, Harry said softly, or a Cerberus. I had thought Cerberus was Greek and therefore possibly fictional. He is very real, said Harry. I have a friend who has met his cousin, a draken. Cerberuses work for hire in the wizarding world. They are used for guarding things. Things people hire Cerberuses to guard are, as a rule, expensive. Then what is in the corridor is something expensive. We are being dared to find out. Not dared, said Harry slowly. Tested. Tested? Who is being tested? Possibly me. Hermione went quiet. She looked at Harry a long moment. She said, And I am not going to take the test yet, said Harry. If someone has gone to the trouble of hiding an expensive thing behind a Cerberus and a forbidden sign, then the expensive thing is going to stay there until the person who hid it comes to move it. We will watch the door. We will watch the headmaster. We will watch Professor Quirrell, who has been staring at his plate ever since the sorting feast and who is not stuttering the same way at dinner as he is during defense. We will not rush. If we rush, we make the testers pace. I do not intend to make the testers pace. Fine, said Hermione, and she opened her book. I will compile a list of questions. Of course you will, said Harry. She smiled quickly into her book. 3 weeks into the term, on the 31st of October, as the enchanted ceiling filled with floating pumpkins, a troll came into the dungeons. Quirrell burst into the hall in a manner that Harry, watching closely, took less than a second to classify as theater. The man's fear was real, his stagger was not. He cried troll in the dungeons, and fainted in the aisle, and the hall rose around him, and Dumbledore called for calm with the great quiet bell of his voice, and prefects began to gather first years, and Harry caught Hermione's sleeve. Where is Hermione? He said. Here, said Hermione. Where is Ron Weasley? She looked at him. At the Gryffindor table. Where was he 5 minutes ago? She looked again. She scanned the far table. She scanned it twice. He was not at the table, she said. He has been in the bathroom crying since Charms, said Harry. I was told. Lavender Brown told 2 other girls at lunch, and one of the other girls is at the Ravenclaw table, and I overheard. He had a quarrel with you. He had a quarrel with me. Yes. Not in the dungeons, then, she said. In the girls' lavatory on the 1st floor. Which is between the dungeons and the Great Hall, which is, in fact, the route a troll would take if someone had steered it up from the dungeons toward the hall as a distraction. Yes, said Harry, go find a prefect. I am going up to the lavatory, said Harry. I am faster alone. Find Flitwick, not a prefect. Tell him, do it quietly, do not follow. Harry, Hermione. Go, she said. He went. He slipped out a side door the moment the prefects turned their backs. He ran up 2 flights of stairs with the clay owl held lightly in his left hand and his wand in his right. Because Helena had said, years ago, do not reach for the wand as if it were a weapon. Reach for it as if it were a tool you have been using your whole life. And he had been using this one 4 weeks, and it was still foreign in his hand, but it was starting to be his, which was all he needed. The troll was, as Hermione had predicted, in the girls' lavatory. It had broken through the door. It was 12 feet tall. It smelled of rot and stone and something chemical. It was advancing slowly on a red-haired boy who was backed against a sink, and who was, unexpectedly, not crying. Ron Weasley had, under the actual pressure of being about to die, found the small, cold, clear place that sometimes existed inside people who were usually silly. He was holding up his wand. The troll raised its club. Harry came around the corner 3 rooms down the corridor, saw through the broken door, and did not hesitate. He had practiced the levitation charm 1,000 times at Helena's, and he had practiced it in class. And he had practiced, privately, the variant that Flitwick had taught him the 2nd day of school for a laugh, which was the variant that levitated not the object but the object's anchor, which for a corridor chandelier was the bolt. He looked at the chandelier outside the lavatory, a great black iron thing with 30 candles in it, holding up its weight of a small car, and he spoke in a quiet, steady voice. Wingardium Leviosa. He lifted the bolt. The chandelier fell. It fell in a controlled arc because he had not cut the bolt free. He had merely unscrewed it, letting the weight come down slow, pivoting around its remaining rope. It swung through the broken door on its chain, at head height for a troll, and struck the troll above the brow ridge with a sound like a bell being rung. The troll stumbled back. Harry pulled the bolt back into the wall with a twist of will, because he could, and the chandelier swung up again like a pendulum and struck a second time. The troll went down. It did not die. It was not that kind of creature. It sat down heavily on its own club and blinked, dazed, and then it began slowly to snore. Ron, against the sink, was staring at Harry. His face was white. His wand hand was shaking. His mouth opened. "All right," said Harry pleasantly. "All good, come on, out. Flitwick will be here in about 90 seconds. It was closer to 40. Flitwick arrived at a sprint, his wand already in his hand, with Hermione behind him and McGonagall behind her and Snape behind her, and Quirrell, somewhere up the stairs, limping to catch up, his turban looking, Harry noticed, faintly singed on one side. The 4 professors took in the sleeping troll and the chandelier and the 2 first years, and then Flitwick looked at the chandelier a long moment and said, "Mr. Potter, did you?" and stopped. Harry did not answer. Hermione stepped forward. "It was me, sir," Hermione said. She said it before McGonagall could speak. She said it the way she said everything, precisely. "I came to look for the troll. I wanted to see one. I did not realize Ron was in here. I levitated the chandelier down onto it when it came at me. I believe I overestimated my capabilities. I am sorry." McGonagall, who had been staring at the chandelier, snapped her gaze to Hermione, then to Harry, then to Ron, who was now not looking at anyone because Ron Weasley had realized, watching Hermione speak, that he was watching a friendship form in front of him that he was not part of. And the realization was, over the course of the next 3 seconds, rearranging his sense of the world. "Miss Granger," said McGonagall slowly, 5 points will be taken from Ravenclaw for your recklessness. 5 points will be awarded to Ravenclaw for sheer dumb luck. Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, back to your common rooms. Flitwick, please help me secure the troll." They went. In the corridor, Hermione and Harry walked together in silence for a full staircase before Hermione said, under her breath, "You owe me." "Yes. It will be a small favor. It will not be that small. I know." She pushed her hair out of her face. They walked the rest of the way up to the Ravenclaw Tower, where the Eagle Knocker asked them a riddle about a circle and a square, and Hermione answered it before Harry could, and they went inside. That night, in the headmaster's office, Albus Dumbledore sat in front of a pensive. In the pensive, he watched the 3rd-floor corridor from the perspective of a portrait that had been hanging there for 109 years. He watched a man in a purple turban approach the door. He watched the man stand in front of the door for a long time, his hand not quite touching the knob. He watched the man put his forehead against the door and whisper to it and step back and turn and limp away. "Tom," Dumbledore said quietly to no one, "you are still there, and you are still impatient." He sat up. He poured himself a measure of brandy. He considered for the 100th time whether to move the stone. He decided, for the 100th time, not to. The stone was bait, and good bait, and tonight had confirmed that a boy he had not planned for had already deduced, in 3 weeks, what the stone was bait for. He did not know whether to be pleased or unsettled. He settled on pleased tentatively, and he closed the pensive, and he sat a long time in the dark of his office with the fire burning down. Chapter 5. The Stone and the Snake. The investigation did not hurry, because Harry had said it would not, and because Hermione, though she had her own metabolism for urgency, was teaching herself to run at his pace. They began with what they had. A Cerberus in a corridor. a stuttering defense professor with a passenger under his turban, a headmaster who had chosen, for reasons of his own, to advertise the forbidden corridor on the first night of the term. They did not begin with books, although Hermione kept wanting to. Harry made her begin with people because people, Helena had taught him, leaked more usefully and in more directions than books did. Books had to be prized, people had only to be asked the right questions in the right tone, and they poured. Susan Bones was their first recruit. She arrived, to her own surprise, on a Saturday at breakfast. Susan was a broad-cheeked Hufflepuff with tidy plaits and an aunt in the Auror office, which Hermione had noticed over Susan's shoulder reading Susan's letters, and which Harry, once Hermione had pointed it out, had decided was valuable. Harry asked her in the library whether she liked her aunt. "Very much," Susan said. "Would your aunt be furious," Harry asked, "if you wrote to her and asked casually and in your own words whether the name Nicholas Flamel meant anything to her?" Susan considered him. Susan was, Harry had been told by Helena's last letter, a person who reached conclusions slowly and then kept them. She took about 12 seconds to reach a conclusion about Harry. She said, "She would probably be interested." "What is this about? A man who stutters in defense," Harry said, "and a corridor on the 3rd floor. You are investigating a teacher." "Yes, because he is going to steal something, I think, and I would like to know in advance." Susan looked at him for a long moment. "I don't trust people who stutter in defense," she said. "My aunt doesn't either. I'll write tonight." She did. The answer came back 3 days later, in a neat clipped hand, on a single sheet of parchment that contained a cautious paragraph identifying Nicholas Flamel as an alchemist friend of the headmaster's, alive and reclusive in France, and a second paragraph, much briefer, advising Susan not to involve herself further unless she had her aunt's express permission, and a third paragraph, briefer still, in a different ink, that read, "Tell your friend Harry that if he ever needs a witness who can keep her mouth shut, he may write to me." The third paragraph was signed only with the initial A, but it was signed, and Harry read it twice and put it in his inside pocket next to the clay owl. Neville came to the investigation by another route. Neville did not, on his own, investigate things. Neville accepted assignments. Harry gave him one. "Observe Professor Quirrell," Harry said, "at meals, at breakfast, and at dinner, especially when he thinks no one is looking. He takes off his turban." He takes it off. He loosens it. He scratches at the back of his head. He does it when he thinks he is alone. Gryffindors eat near Quirrell because he eats on the Gryffindor side of the staff table. You sit at the end of the Gryffindor table. You have, Neville, the least noticeable face in the school. I say that affectionately. Watch him. Neville watched him. Neville reported, 3 weeks in, that Quirrell did indeed loosen his turban when he thought no one was looking, and scratch at the back of his head, and mutter, that the muttering was not English but was not Latin either, and contained a hiss that Neville's grandmother had told him once was the sound of certain bad magic, that Quirrell sometimes turned, for no obvious reason, slightly to the left while sitting at the table, as if the back of his head were getting a better view of something, and that, on one specific occasion, Quirrell had paused while drinking his goblet of water, and the water in the goblet had briefly, Neville was embarrassed to report this, gone black. "Good," said Harry. "Keep watching." Hermione had by this time been reading, because she could not be stopped from reading, and Harry had learned not to try. She had been reading, mainly, old copies of Transfiguration today in the restricted section, which Madame Pince had allowed her into after a single conversation in which Hermione had looked at Pince with the solemn attention of a novice at a shrine, and Pince had decided, in a rare act of personal favor, to take a risk. Hermione had found, in the 20-year run of the journal, a single article mentioning the Philosopher's Stone, a joint paper by Nicholas Flamel and Albus Dumbledore, written when Dumbledore had been in his 60s. The paper described a new alloy of gold. The paper did not name its subject. The paper was dated 1949. They've been doing this together for 60 years, Hermione said quietly in their corner of the library. It is not a theft, Harry said slowly, so much as a loan being considered. Meaning Flamel gave the stone to Dumbledore for safekeeping. Meaning Dumbledore put it in the castle on purpose. Meaning Dumbledore expects someone to come for it. Meaning Dumbledore is using the stone as a lure. For whom? For the man on the back of Quirrell's head. Who is Voldemort? Hermione did not flinch at the name because Harry had asked her at the beginning of the term not to, and she had agreed and she had practiced. Then Dumbledore is baiting a trap with a 70-year-old friend's life work, she said. Yes. And the trap is being sprung inside a school of children. Yes. That is contemptible. It is also pragmatic, said Harry. And the children are so far safe. The obstacles are on the other side of the Cerberus. Most children will not get past a Cerberus. Most children will not try. He has, to be fair, installed the deterrence. It is still contemptible. Yes, they sat with that. Hermione tapped the journal's spine. She said, so what do? We let him run the trap, said Harry. We help it close, because if we stop Quirrell now, Voldemort only moves to a different body and a different plan. But Voldemort in a body we can see is better than Voldemort in one we cannot. And because the headmaster has planned this for a year at least, and I would rather his plan work the first time than the third. You are helping Dumbledore, said Hermione. I am letting Dumbledore do what he set out to do, said Harry. It is not the same thing, she considered that. And the stone I would like not to give back to either of them, said Harry. I have an idea about that. I will explain it when it is further along. He did not tell her about the clay owl. Some tools he preferred to keep for now his own. Quidditch tryouts came. Harry, to McGonagall's surprise, did not appear. McGonagall tracked him down in the library. Mr. Potter, you have a flying talent. Madame Hooch remarked on it in her first-week notes. I have seen children fly fewer hours and be drafted to the team. Yes, Professor, Harry said politely. Are you declining? I am. Why? Because I do not propose to offer myself as a target at 50 feet, moving for 2 hours a week to crowds that include the parents of every enemy I am going to acquire in this school, in pursuit of a small ball whose capture is not useful to me. I am sorry. It is not about the flying. I like the flying. It is about the ball and the crowd. McGonagall stood perfectly still for several seconds. Mr. Potter, she said. Professor. That is the single most annoying sentence I have heard from a first year in my career. I am sorry, Professor. It is also, she said, very slowly, correct. She turned and walked away. Harry watched her go. He would remember later that she did not say anything at the staff table about his refusal, that she did not, as he had half expected, go to Dumbledore, that she had, in fact, absorbed the refusal into her private ledger and told no one. He thought this was one of the kindest things any adult had ever done for him, and he never told her so, because he had reason to believe McGonagall would have considered being told to be slightly insulting. Christmas came. Harry stayed at the castle, on Helena's letter-written advice. The castle at Christmas was emptier and brighter and colder, and it smelled of pine and dust and old stone, and he walked the corridors with a quiet pleasure he had not expected to have in this building. Hermione had gone home. Neville had gone home. Susan had gone home. Harry had the Ravenclaw common room mostly to himself for a fortnight. On Christmas morning a parcel arrived with no card. It was a silver-gray cloak, light as a breath, that slid through his hands like water. He knew what it was. Helena had described it. It was his father's or his father's father's or somebody's further back, and it had been with Dumbledore for 10 years, and it had been returned now with no explanation because Dumbledore had wanted to return a thing of his father's to him and had not wanted or had not been able to say so. Harry held the cloak a long moment. Then he wrote a note. The note read, Professor, I will use this carefully. Thank you. H. Potter. He sent it by the castle's internal owl post. He did not use the cloak to go wandering that night. He used it the following evening to check one thing. He went quietly down to the third-floor corridor, stood outside the forbidden door, listened to the breathing of something very large inside, timed the breathing, noted the spacing of the pauses, and went back upstairs. He had not needed the cloak for the trip. He had used it to test whether Dumbledore was having it watched. Dumbledore was. A portrait on the second floor followed him with its eyes for 8 feet, and then, pretending not to, did not follow him after. Harry noted the portrait. He noted also, when he slipped the cloak off in the corridor outside the Ravenclaw Tower, that the air around him seemed to register his return, like a room becoming aware of a person. Dumbledore was having him watched by the castle itself. Harry accepted that. He thought that if he had been Dumbledore, he would have done the same. 2 nights later, he went back under the cloak to a different room. He had deduced from Hermione's research, and from a remark Hagrid had made over tea, a remark about a mirror Hagrid called fascinating, that one, bit moonstruck, that Dumbledore had moved the mirror of Arist out of its private storage and into an unused classroom on the 4th floor. Harry did not this time know that he was being watched. He assumed it. He went anyway. The classroom was empty except for the mirror. The mirror stood on its clawed feet in the center of the room, taller than him by twice over, and its frame was carved with words he read and translated silently as he approached. I show not your face but your heart's desire. He liked the riddle. He liked that it was, for a mirror, unusually honest about its trick. He did not stand in front of it. He stood beside it. He looked at it from an angle. The angle showed nothing of interest. He moved, one careful step at a time, around to the front, and he did not look straight into the glass. He looked at the ceiling's reflection, then the floor, then, because he had always been going to look at himself. He saw what he saw. He saw himself, 11 years old, standing in the clearing behind the cottage in Tintagel on a summer afternoon. He saw Helena at his right hand in her charcoal coat, watching him with her small private pride. He saw, on his left, Athena in her traveling gray, looking at him without smile, without need. The 3 of them were not doing anything. They were only standing. Behind them on the rise was a ring of olive trees that had not been there in the real Tintagel. Above them, in the sky, an owl was flying in a slow, steady circle. Harry looked at the image for a long moment. He took it in. He understood with the quiet shock of a person reaching a foundation under a familiar floor that he was, in the image, holding the thing he wanted. He was not being shown a wish. He was being shown a possession. What he wanted he already had. He had not expected that. It changed him for a second. He stepped back from the mirror. He folded the cloak around him. He left the room. He did not look into the mirror twice. He was down a flight of stairs when he heard Dumbledore come into the classroom behind him. He did not wait to listen. He already knew what he wanted to know. He went up to his dorm and he slept. In his dream, Athena was sitting on the edge of his bed with one hand on his knee, and she said simply, "Good. He has nothing to catch you with." And Harry said in the dream, "Yes." And the dream let him be. In January, something changed in the background music of the castle. It was subtle. It was the sort of thing Harry would not have noticed if he had not, by habit, noticed every morning the angle of the light in the great hall and the shape of the wind on the lake and the number of owls on the owlery roof. In January, the owls were fewer. In January, the forbidden forest, when Harry looked at it from the Ravenclaw Tower window after midnight, showed, at its heart, a small patch of dark that did not reflect the moon. He wrote to Helena. "Something has woken," she wrote back after 2 days. "Not yours, not his. Do not touch it. Do not look at it for long. Stay inside the wards of the castle. Write if it speaks to you. Do not reply if it does." He did not reply when it did. A dream came in late February of a voice that spoke not in words but in the rhythm of water over old stone, and the dream offered him a view of the castle from below. He refused the view. He woke. The cool presence at the back of his neck, which had been quiet for a week, was there again, steady as a hand. "I am not leaving you," Athena said in his head. "I am only watching what is watching you." What is it? An older thing than he is. It has been here a long time. It has mostly slept. He is stirring it. "We will deal with it later. First the boy and the stone." He nodded in his bed as if she could see him. He thought she could. The descent, when it came on a Friday in June. He had been expecting it because he had been watching Quirrell. Quirrell had, over the last week, grown more and more agitated. His stutter, which Harry now knew to be theater, had begun to slip into ordinary speech at odd moments. The black had come into his water goblet twice in a single dinner. On Friday, Dumbledore left the castle. His leaving was announced in a note pinned to the staff board and also in a small owl-delivered letter to Ravenclaw Tower which, when Harry unfolded it, proved to be from the headmaster and read, in its entirety, "Mr. Potter, I am called to London. I expect to return by morning. The school is in Professor McGonagall's hands. Please do not take advantage of my absence." Harry read the letter in the common room. He read it twice. He folded it. He slipped it into his pocket. He said to Hermione across the table, "Tonight." Hermione did not ask what. She said, "Your plan. Your fire, Neville's steadiness, Susan's watch. We go at 10. We do not go further than the board. We get through. We do not split. We should tell an adult." "We should," said Harry, "and we will. I will leave a letter on Flitwick's desk now, sealed, to be opened at midnight. If we are not back by midnight, Flitwick will follow. That is our safety." "That is not a very safe safety." "It is safer than nothing," said Harry. They went at 10. They took the back staircases. Susan, at the landing of the 3rd floor, stood watch with a small mirror she had charmed to reflect the corridor back to Hermione's mirror below. She did not come inside the door. The Cerberus was asleep, because Harry had spent an hour in Hagrid's hut the afternoon before asking casually about music, and Hagrid fondly had told him about Fluffy's weakness. Harry had then bought a small second-hand flute from the music shop in Hogsmeade that weekend, and he played it now, not well but well enough, and Fluffy yawned its 3 heads and slept. Hermione managed the devil's snare. She did not shriek. She did not thrash. She kept her voice even, and she sent fire, at Harry's count, to curl the vines back, and the trio slid through. The Keys room was Neville's. Neville, who had been taking private flying lessons from his grandmother every weekend for 6 years in a way he had not mentioned to anyone, took the spare broom off the wall and caught the right key on the 3rd attempt, and he landed so neatly that Hermione stared at him and Harry smiled, quietly, because Neville had just had, for the first time in his life, the experience of being the competent one in a room. Harry was careful not to comment. Neville, he thought, would remember the silence as kindly as he would have remembered praise and be less uncomfortable doing it. McGonagall's chessboard was Harry's. He stood at the edge of the board for a long moment. He looked at the pieces. He read the layout. He did not play it as a game, which was the trap. The pieces wanted to be played as a game and then to reward sacrifice. He played it as a problem. He moved carefully not to win, but to reach the door with all 3 of them intact. He sacrificed the queen, not in a grand heroic gesture, but in a cold calculation. When the sacrifice removed the last piece that stood between Hermione and the exit, and when the counter-sacrifice it invited was a check that Harry could then break in 3 more moves without further loss. The white queen went down with a crack like a thunderslap. The black king, 3 moves later, surrendered. "Mate," Harry said quietly. "Go." They went. The troll Quirrell had already dealt with. It lay in the next room, snoring, with a bump on its head the size of Harry's fist. Harry stepped around it. They did not wake it. Snape's logic puzzle was Hermione's triumph. Her face by the light of the 7 bottles was bright. She was, Harry thought, holding 2 inches off the floor with the simple pleasure of having been told there was a problem she could solve. She solved it in 3 minutes. She handed him the correct bottle. "Go," she said. I'll take the other one back. Get us out when you are done. Wait for Flitwick, Harry said. I will wait for Flitwick. Go back to the stairs. Do not follow me. If something happens, Susan is watching. She will send for Flitwick. Harry, Hermione. She pressed his hand once, and she took the other bottle, and she drank, and she went back the way they had come. Harry watched her go. Then he drank his own potion, and the cold of it filled him, and he walked through the black flame into the last room. The last room had the mirror. The mirror stood as it had stood on the 4th floor, only now it was in a circle of torches in a round stone room, and in front of it, his back to Harry, stood Quirinus Quirrell. Quirrell turned. He did not stutter. He had stopped stuttering 10 minutes ago. His face, in the torchlight, was a young man's face drawn thin by a year of living with something that should not have lived on him. His eyes were red around the edges. His turban had been pulled off. It lay in a heap on the floor, and the second face, pale as raw dough, was visible in the back of his head, as small as an apple and as unblinking as a crack. "Ah," said the second face, which was not Quirrell. "The boy." "Yes," said Harry. "Come here." Harry did not come. He had expected the invitation. He had made a decision 2 months ago about what he would do in this room, and he did not now reconsider it. He did not look at the mirror. He looked at Quirrell's face. He spoke to the face in the back of the head directly. "Chere," he said in Greek, "greetings. Tom." The second face did not move, but the room, Harry felt, got colder by about 2 degrees. "You," said the second face after a considering pause, "have made a friend who is less than discreet." "She is not my friend," said Harry. "She is my patron. She has told me your name because she does not believe in withholding names. It is a policy we share." "Gods," said Voldemort, "are unreliable allies." "You would know," said Harry. Quirrell's body flinched. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. "I will have the stone," he said. "And then I will have you. And then I will have her in time if I can, and if I cannot, I will simply have everything she cared for. There is nothing new about this plan." "No," said Harry. "I have noticed." He took the clay owl out of his pocket. Voldemort's face flickered. The flicker was small. Harry saw it. He recognized it. It was the expression a cornered intelligence makes when a variable has arrived that it did not factor in. "What is that?" said Voldemort carefully. "A gift." From, said Harry, "the one person whose name you have been avoiding the entire time you have been talking to me." He did not throw it. He had been instructed not to throw it. He opened his hand and let the owl fall off his palm onto the stone floor, and the owl, in the 2 feet of falling, cracked. And what came out of it was not fire and not force. What came out of it was sight. It came as a flood of gray light. It came as if a window had been opened in the room's history. Quirrell staggered. He clutched his temples. He made a sound that was not a scream, because it was a scream of someone else behind his face, and the someone else was seeing, at enormous speed, every choice he had ever made that had brought him to this circle of torches on this stone floor in this Scottish spring. Harry saw at his wrist the olive branch glow a faint silver and warm his skin where it lay. Athena's mark held him steady while the light did its work. Quirrell fell to one knee. He fell to both. He raised his face, and the second face on the back of his head was shrieking at him, was shouting at him to kill, to take, to move. But Quirrell, for the first time in a year, was not listening. Quirrell was looking with his own eyes at his own life. Quirrell began, very quietly, to cry. Voldemort, after a long, terrible moment, tore himself free. He tore himself out through the crown of Quirrell's skull, a wisp of black smoke with the shape of a face in it, and he did what he had done once before, years ago, when another mother's mark had stopped him. He fled. He fled through the stone of the ceiling and up through the rock of the castle and out into the spring night. And he left Quirrell on the floor as an empty young man with wet cheeks and nothing at all in the back of his head. Harry did not look at Quirrell for a moment. He looked at the mirror. The mirror on its clawed feet showed him the same image it had shown him before, the clearing in Tintagel, 3 figures under an olive ring, an owl circling. It showed him, this time with something red gold in his hand. It showed him, in other words, the stone. He walked to the mirror. He put his hand flat on the glass. Thought clearly and without greed, I would like to put the stone safely away. I would like it to go back to its owner. I do not want it. He spoke aloud in Greek. Let the want that is in me be the want the mirror reads. His pocket on his left hip grew heavy by a little more than an ounce. He did not look down. He did not check. He turned and walked to Quirrell. Quirrell on the floor looked up. His face was wet and emptied and human. I am sorry, Quirrell said. I know, said Harry. Can you stand? Number, then sit. Flitwick will be here in about 4 minutes. You will not be arrested tonight. You will be taken to the infirmary. You may live. I do not know what kind of life you will have. I am not in any case your judge. Quirrell said, sit, breathe. He is gone. Quirrell sat. He breathed. His hand went up for the first time in many months to the empty back of his own head, and he made a small sound of unfamiliar astonishment. Flitwick arrived in 3 minutes with Hermione and McGonagall at his shoulder. McGonagall took one look at Quirrell and at Harry and at the mirror, and she did not speak. Flitwick began, quietly and competently, to do the things that needed doing. Far below them, under the stone of the dungeons, under the stone below the dungeons, beneath layers of rock that had not been disturbed since the school was built, an eye as old as the hills turned very slightly in the dark. It had been woken. It had not yet moved. It was only aware now of the name of the boy who had just taken a face off a thief in a round stone room. It stored the name, with the slow, quiet attention of a thing that had a great deal of time, and it closed its eye again and waited. Chapter 6, Champion Rising. Madame Pomfrey, with the settled opinion of a woman who had patched up a century of children who had gone where they should not have gone, put Harry in a bed at the end of the ward and declared him fit for nothing more strenuous than reading until the following afternoon. She took the flute, the cloak, and politely his wand, and placed all 3 in a drawer beside the bed. She did not take the stone. The stone, heavy in Harry's trouser pocket, was her business exactly as far as she cared to be told, which was not far. She drew the curtain around the bed. You will sleep, she said. You will drink what I give you. You will not argue. Yes, madam, said Harry. And Mr. Potter. Madam, do it again, Madame Pomfrey said, and I will see to it that you do not fly in this school for a decade, regardless of your opinions about Quidditch. Am I clear? Entirely, madam. She closed the curtain. He drank what she gave him. He slept. He slept for 11 hours. He woke when the curtain around the bed was drawn back by a hand he recognized before he looked. Dumbledore sat down in the chair Madame Pomfrey had placed, and he folded his hands in his lap, and he did not speak for a while. Harry, sitting up against the pillows, did not speak either. I thought, Dumbledore said at last, that I had prepared for every reasonable version of this year. You prepared for a child who did not know what year it was, said Harry. I did. And you got a child who had been told. Yes. Whose fault is that? Dumbledore considered his hands. Mine, he said. On reflection, it is possible to tell the truth about oneself in small installments. I am attempting one. Harry did not help him. He had decided some time ago that he would not help this conversation. I have a number of questions, said Dumbledore after a while. Ask them. How long have you known about the prophecy? Since I was 8. Who told you? She did, directly. Helena, Dumbledore nodded very slightly. How long have you known the Dursleys were a deliberate choice? Since the morning after she took me from the house. Who took you from the house? Helena Ashworth, who has been waiting for me for 7 years on instructions from the one who claimed me. Who claimed you? Harry took the edge of the sleeve of his pajamas, unbuttoned it, rolled it back. He held his left wrist up to the window light. The mark of Athena, olive branch, owl, fine gray line, was as clear as it had been on the first night. Dumbledore looked at it. He did not move for perhaps 10 seconds. Then he let out, quite slowly, a long breath, and he sat back in his chair and he closed his eyes for a moment as if pressing his palms against the inside of them without using his hands. "Athena," he said. "Yes. I should have considered the possibility. I did not." "You had rather a lot of possibilities to consider," said Harry neutrally. "Still, I should have considered it. She has not, forgive me, she has not in my lifetime paid attention to Britain. She has been paying attention to me." "Yes." Dumbledore opened his eyes. They were, Harry saw for the first time, very tired eyes. "Harry, I have placed you with your aunt. I have, I now know, allowed your life there to be considerably worse than I told myself it was. I have, having done so, arranged a year of education in which the centerpiece was a confrontation that I engineered you to stumble into. I have, in short, treated you as a tool and a ward in approximately that order, with decreasing success at telling myself that the order was reversed. I am not going to apologize to you. Apologies from me would, at this point, be a kind of begging. I will instead tell you what I am going to do differently. Please do. I am going to tell you, before the end of this term, everything I know about Tom Riddle. I am going to tell you what I know of the prophecy. I am going to tell you what I know of the sevenfold protection I believe he has attempted. I am going to ask you what you would like to do with this information, and I am going to accept within the limits of my conscience the answer you give. I am going to stop using your name as a playing piece. I am going to invite you into my confidence. I am not going to demand, in exchange, your confidence in return. You will give me that when and if I have earned it." Harry listened to all of it. He heard the truth in it. He also heard the vanity in it, the particular vanity of a clever old man who, having been caught, wished to be admired for his candor. He waited. He let the silence work a little on the old man. Dumbledore, to his credit, did not fill the silence. Then Harry said, "That is acceptable. In exchange, I will tell you a few things. Please. I will remain at this school. I will attend my lessons. I will not use my relationship with the goddess to undermine you in public, because she has no interest in being made public, and because I have no interest in being a political weapon against the most competent wizard in Britain. I will, however, not pretend that I am alone in your care. I am not. I will write to Helena weekly. I will, when I have need, write to others. You will not read those letters. If you have them intercepted, I will know, and I will leave this school within the week, and you will not find me again. Is this clear?" "It is. You will not, under any circumstances, inform anyone in the ministry about her mark. You will not inform the ministry about her. You will not inform your order, which I know you maintain in dormancy, about her. If there comes a day when she must be known, that day will be chosen by her, not by you. Is this clear?" "It is. One more thing." "Yes." "I want Quirinus Quirrell not to be arrested." Dumbledore blinked. "He attacked a student. He was ridden by another man," said Harry. "He is, this morning, possibly the most wrecked human being in the castle. He is alive because I was careful with the owl. I would like him to remain alive, outside of Azkaban, under observation. He may teach. He may not. I do not require either. I require only that we not destroy him further. He was used. We were all used. We can afford mercy in one direction." Dumbledore looked at Harry a long moment. "That," he said quietly, "is more generous than I had planned." "She is more generous than people think," said Harry. "She taught me, my goddess." Dumbledore inclined his head. He rose. "I will speak with the minister," he said. "Quirinus will be remanded to medical care, not to a cell. I give you my word. I am glad, Mr. Potter, that we are to know each other." "We will see," said Harry politely. Dumbledore paused at the curtain. He turned once as if to say something more, thought better of it, went out. Madame Pomfrey let Harry get up after lunch. He was moving stiffly, but he was moving. She made him drink a final potion and told him he was not to climb stairs without sitting down at the landings, and that she would know if he had. He promised. He walked out of the ward in bare feet, carrying his shoes. He found Snape in the first-floor corridor. Snape was leaning against a window, arms folded, a small black book in one hand, and he was not pretending to be there by accident. He straightened when Harry came into view. His face was its usual closed page. "Potter, sir." "I wanted to give you this," Snape said, and he held out the book. Harry took it. It was a narrow leather notebook, its edges foxed, its spine worn. He opened it. The pages were covered in green ink in a girl's looping handwriting that he did not recognize. Diagrams of plants, lists of potions, a marginalia that was, he realized after half a page, almost an ongoing argument with herself about brewing times. The argument was clever. It was also, in its specific rhythms, familiar. He had been reading Hermione Granger's notes for 8 months, and there was a family resemblance. Yes, said Snape. This was hers. Her 6th year. She gave it to me at the start of that year. She wanted to. It was not a thing I asked for. I kept it. I had always intended in some fashion to return it. I had not intended to return it to her son. Harry held the book carefully. He did not flip further. He would read it alone later in a quiet room with a cup of tea. "Thank you," he said. "It is not a peace offering. I know. I will continue to find you difficult to be around. I know. You are to take potions with me for 7 years. I will not make it easier for you than it is. I will not make it harder than it is either, as I have, perhaps, with some previous students." "Yes, sir." Snape looked at him a long moment. "She did sometimes speak of wisdom," Snape said unexpectedly. "As a discipline. She was, I think, not unready for the kind of friend your patron would have been if they had met. I had not let myself consider that before yesterday." He turned and walked away. He did not look back. Harry stood with the notebook in his hand for a long minute. Then he tucked it into his pajama pocket, and he went up the stairs slowly, as Madame Pomfrey had asked. And he did not sit at the landings because he did not need to, but he paused at them anyway, because he had given a promise, and he intended not to lie even in small things. That night in the Ravenclaw common room, Hermione and Neville were waiting for him. Susan had come up from Hufflepuff and been allowed in by the Eagle Knocker, which had asked her a riddle about triangles and had accepted her answer. They were sitting on the hearthrug. They did not leap up when he came in. They looked at him. They waited for him to sit down. He sat down. He did not tell them all of it. He told them enough. He told them that the stone was back with its owner, which was true. An old man in a small house in France had woken that morning to find, on his kitchen table, a thing he had given into another old man's keeping and had not been surprised, and had poured a second cup of coffee for no one in particular. He told them that Quirrell would live. He told them that Voldemort had fled. He told them that the school would, he thought, be a different place from now on. "And you?" said Hermione. "I am tired," he said. "Other than that, the same, a little older," Neville said, small-voiced. "What about next year?" "Next year we will be ready," said Harry, "and we will have more friends. And the headmaster and I have reached, I think, an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" "One I will not tell you the details of because he is old and I am 11 and the details are between us, but an arrangement." Susan, folding her hands in her lap, said, "My aunt will be very interested to hear about you this summer." "Be selective," said Harry. "She is a good person. She does not need yet to be made a part of what I am a part of. Tell her about the troll, which is already in the school record. Tell her I was helpful. Leave the rest alone." "Very well." They sat for a while without speaking. Then Hermione, who could not stand long stretches of silence when she had something to say, said, "Harry, I have been meaning to ask. You said she, several times now." "Yes." "Are you going to tell us who she is?" Harry looked at the fire. He looked at his friends. He considered what Helena would advise. He considered what Athena would advise. He considered, separately, what he himself would advise because he had been practicing the habit of consulting his own counsel in parallel with theirs. Then he unbuttoned the cuff of his left sleeve. He rolled it back. He laid his wrist on his knee, palm up, and he let the firelight fall on the gray owl and the olive branch. Hermione did not make a sound. Neville breathed in sharply. Susan's eyes widened. Athena, Harry said. I was claimed by her when I was 6. I am her champion. That is the word. It is not quite a son. It is something else. She is my patron. I am her student and her instrument by consent on both sides. I am telling you this because you 3 have earned the knowledge. I am not telling anyone else. Please understand that this is a gift I am giving you. It is a weight. Take it if you can. Refuse it if you cannot. I will not think less of you. Hermione said after a moment, I accept it. Neville said, I accept it. Susan said, I accept it, thank you. Harry buttoned his sleeve. He looked at the fire for a while. He thought about the first night in the cupboard. He thought about the 100 things he had not been able to imagine from the cupboard, including a room in a castle on a lake in Scotland with 3 friends sitting around a fire with him and knowing his name. He did not say any of it out loud. He allowed himself, privately, to feel it. That night in his dreams, Athena stood in a clearing that was not Tintagel and was not Edinburgh and was not, as far as Harry could tell, any real place. It was a clearing of olive trees in a silvery half-light, and she was waiting for him at the center in her traveling gray. You did well, she said. Thank you. Come and sit. I have a thing to show you and a thing to tell you. He sat on the grass. She sat beside him. The olive trees above them moved in a wind he could not feel. She put her hand flat on the grass, and the grass between them became, not a mirror exactly, but a thin sheet of silver on which images began to move. She showed him first a room he did not know, an old drawing room in a large house, a fire burning low, a man with long pale hair and a silver-topped cane sitting at a desk, writing. She showed him the envelope the man was addressing. Ginevra Weasley. She showed him the book the man was enclosing, a small black diary, unremarkable to the glance, which he set inside a length of flowered paper and tied with a ribbon and set aside on the corner of the desk for the Morning Post. Do you see the book? Athena said. Yes. That is a piece of him. He made several. That is one. It has been in Lucius Malfoy's cellar for 10 years. Lucius has not known what it is. He has been nervous of it. He is, this summer, going to use it. He will slip it into the school trunk of a child he thinks he dislikes because he thinks it will cause trouble for an old enemy, and because he has been ordered to do so in a letter that seemed innocuous to him when he read it. He will not remember quite why he is doing it. Our friend in the wreath has a way with letters. Voldemort. Yes. The diary is a Horcrux. Yes. I told you we would not do riddles. I told you also that he had attempted a 7-fold protection. That is 1/7. There are others. We will find them. But this one first, because it is coming to your school, and it is going to ride a child, and the child is going to suffer if we do not catch it in time. Ginny Weasley. Yes, I am sorry to tell you the name. I want you to know it. I want you to be ready. We will not stop Lucius Malfoy from giving it to her. We could, but it would only delay the plan by 6 months and we would learn less. We will stop it at the school. We will not let the child die. I promise, said Harry. Athena considered him. Good, she said. One more thing, show me your wrist. He held it out. She took it between her cool hands. The mark under her fingers brightened very slightly, not into a glow, but into a subtle thickening of line, as if the ink had been redrawn with a slightly heavier pen. He felt at the base of his skull the cool presence settle by a degree. You have grown into some of what I gave you, Athena said. I am adding a little. You will not notice immediately. You will in the fall notice that you have access to a language you have never studied and that you have several hours a day of clarity that you did not have. Do not misuse them. I will not. I know I would not have added otherwise. She set his wrist down. The thing that opened an eye under your castle. Yes. It is not mine. It is older than mine. It has been sleeping in the rock for long enough that the school does not quite know it is there. It is waking because he is feeding it power by his mere presence, by his hunger. We will need in time to address it, not this year. Next year, perhaps not. The year after, possibly. Do not go looking for it. If it speaks to you again, do as I said, do not answer. I won't. Good, I will see you in the summer. Helena has the house in Tintagel again for a fortnight. I will come there for an evening. I will eat a pear. He laughed. She smiled, her rare, real smile, and she put her hand briefly on the top of his head in a gesture that was not quite parental and not quite not, and the dream let him go. He woke to dawn light on the bedposts. His wrist, when he looked at it, was a little clearer. He breathed once deeply, and he got up, and he went to breakfast. The last week of term went the way last weeks of term go. Exams were sat. Results were announced. Harry placed first in 3 subjects and second in 2, behind Hermione in both, which he accepted with a private satisfaction that surprised him by being larger than he had predicted. Neville placed respectably, which, for a boy who had arrived at Hogwarts being told he would disgrace his grandmother, was a triumph he did not yet know how to hold. On the last night, the leaving feast, the great hall hung with the banners of Ravenclaw. Because Ravenclaw had won the House Cup, Dumbledore, at the staff table, stood and made a short speech that did not, for once, include a last-minute awarding of mysterious points, because he had decided, apparently, that he was done with that particular theater. Harry, eating his final helping of treacle tart, caught Dumbledore's eye once across the hall. Dumbledore inclined his head. Harry inclined his in return. It was not yet friendship. It was the acknowledgement of a truce. At the Gryffindor table, Ron Weasley, whose first year had gone not at all the way he had imagined it, was watching Harry with an expression Harry noted and shelved, a look that had in it about 3 different emotions wound together and would take, Harry thought, 2 or 3 more years to come apart. He did not owe Ron the untangling. He did not dislike him. They would, he thought, probably not be friends. That was all right. On the train home, Hermione, Neville, and Susan shared the compartment with him. They did not talk for the first hour. They were tired in a shared way that was itself a kind of conversation. After the trolley came by, Hermione opened a book. Neville fell asleep with his toad under his chin. Susan made them all play a word game that involved making increasingly specific lists of magical animals by region, which Hermione won because Hermione could not stop herself, and Harry let her win because it pleased her and it cost him nothing. King's Cross appeared in the window. The train slid under the glass roof and stopped at platform 9 3/4. Harry pulled down his trunk. He stepped off the train. Helena was standing at the pillar. She was in a plain summer coat. She did not wave. She did not rush. She stood and she watched him come. And when he reached her, she put her arms around him without ceremony and held him for what must have been, to anyone watching, a slightly longer hug than was strictly customary for a guardian and a ward. Harry, who had decided at breakfast that he was not going to cry until he saw her, did not cry at breakfast and did not cry on the train and did, briefly, into her shoulder, cry at King's Cross. "Welcome home, champion," said Helena quietly into the top of his head. "Welcome home," said Harry. She stepped back. She looked at him. She said with the small practical smile that was her favorite, "I have changed the bedsheets. I have laid in the good tea. I have bought 3 things you do not yet know that you wanted. The first is a compass whose needle does not point north. It is in the drawer of your desk. The other 2 we will unwrap over dinner. Come." She took his trunk in one hand and the cage of the small gray owl, who had been at Hogwarts all year and flown letters home every week without fuss, in the other, and she led him through the arch back into the Muggle world. The bricks shifted behind them. The noise of Muggle King's Cross, after a full year of castle acoustics, struck him as a kind of song. They did not go by apparition. Helena said, over her shoulder, "I thought we would take the train. The scenic one. We have 6 hours. I have bought sandwiches." They took the train. They ate the sandwiches. She had bought, among them, one with cold pear on brown bread which Harry found out later she had made specifically for him. It was past midnight when they reached the flat above the bookshop. The bookshop, which had been closed while she went south, smelled of paper and the cold stove. She lit the stove. She made tea. She put a third cup out without comment. Harry, who had been wondering, looked at the third cup and at the rocking chair, which was empty, and at the stairs, which were empty, and then back at Helena. "She will stop in briefly later," Helena said. "Not tonight, I think, the week. She wanted me to put the cup out anyway. Go upstairs. There is something on your desk." He went upstairs. On the desk, beside the compass that did not point north, lay the leather-bound journal from Vault 711. It had not been there the week before. Helena must have brought it out that morning. He sat at the desk. He opened the journal. The first page, which had been blank on the day he had seen it in the vault, was no longer blank. It had, in a handwriting he recognized from a single sentence in a dream, a line at the top and the rest of the page waiting for him to fill it. The line read, "We have work to do." He sat for a moment with his hand flat on the page. Then he took up the pen that was lying beside the journal, an ordinary fountain pen, a very old one that had been his father's, which Helena had saved for a day like this, and he began, in a careful, steady hand, to answer. "I am ready," he wrote. "What shall we do first?" Far to the south, past Scotland and across the border, past the sleeping towns and the waking ports and the long, broad black of the Channel, in a forest in Albania, a wisp of smoke that was the remaining mind of Tom Riddle drifted through the branches of a birch and considered, with the slow, cold intelligence that had always been his best feature, the question of how to resume. Far to the north, above the forbidden forest at Hogwarts, a single owl flew in the late summer dusk. It was a small gray owl. It was not Harry's. It belonged to no one. It had been given its flight by a goddess who did not, as a rule, appear in the places where her champions were not, but who watched, through the eyes of her birds, a great deal more than most people understood. The owl circled once over the forest. It did not land. It did not call. And beneath the trees, far below the leaf mold, further below the rock, in a chamber that had not been opened in 1,000 years, and had been built before the school stood on the cliff at all, an eye, old as the stones of the glens, older than the names that had been given to the glens, older than the wizards who had walked over its roof with no idea it was there, opened slowly, with the patience of a thing that had learned long ago that patience was the only magic that always worked, and it looked, through 1,000 feet of rock, at a small boy in an attic bedroom in Edinburgh, writing in a journal by the light of a lamp. The eye watched him for a long moment. Then quite slowly, with a terrible quiet pleasure, it opened wider.